The national grid moves to avoid blackouts by paying you to use less energy as the country faces freezing weather.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd of January. This is Breakfast on GBNews with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, if your electricity doesn't go off, hundreds of thousands of households will be paid by the national grid to use less energy today between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. as it rolls out its scheme to avoid blackouts.
Conservative Party Chairman Nadhim Zahawi is facing claims he tried to avoid paying tax after reports emerged he paid HMRC £5 million when he was Chancellor.
Boris Johnson has visited Ukraine amidst questions about his appointment of BBC Chairman Richard Sharp, who allegedly helped the former PM secure an £800,000 loan.
And a charity is calling for increased action by the government to eliminate cervical cancer. Joe's Trust says the UK has the tools to eradicate the disease.
Now, what about this one for a story today? Households right across the country are going to be paid to reduce energy as the national grid moves to avoid blackouts.
Under the scheme, the electricity system operator is expected to pay out over £1 million, encouraging people not to use their energy today between 5 and 6 p.m.
Well, like, that's nothing. £1 million.
It's about £10 per household.
It's about £10 out of their pocket,
but don't
more or less.
Put your kettle on between 5 and 6 is the message.
Well, I think this is really strange as to how they monitor this or whatever. But all of this, of course, if you look out the window today, most likely have fog and freezing weather. So what the National Grid has done, they've put coal-fired power stations on standby to provide backup electricity if needed.
Well, joining us now is supply chain expert and the director of Export Unlocked, Richard Bartlett. Good morning to you, Richard. Look, National Grid at pains to tell us that there is no risk of a blackout, but they wouldn't be putting this in place for the first time ever if they weren't serious concerns about supplies, would they?
Well, good morning, Eamonn, as well. Yeah, it's a very unusual in year 2023 that we're having these kind of situations. It's just one thing after the other. I mean, to switch your heating off when it's -1 at the moment, it's beyond kind of a joke, really. And it worries me that it's okay doing these things, but what about the poor people who have got no heating in the first place, as we knew when we've been covering this in the last, particularly the last year, the situations that people are in. I mean, like Eamonn just said, then, the savings that it's going to amount to doesn't seem really worth the amount of work that's involved, or people are just going to do it. Can't see it. I can't see myself doing it, to be honest, and I can't see many other people doing it. It'd be interesting to see what happens. Is it just another gimmick to keep people happy?
Well, I agree with you. It's got gimmick stamped all over it. And I'm thinking, what do they do when a paltry £1 million runs out around the country? Because it won't take too long for that to happen.
No, and it's amazing, isn't it, how they spend the money. So, yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, I think the first thing they need to do is really get a grip of what's happening. And now, we covered this, as you remember. Unfortunately, Eamonn was off and hope he's well now. We covered this a couple of months ago at GBNews, and we had a huge response with people who were very worried about, just about, again, the credit. You remember we covered it, and that was quite frightening, the amount of people who phoned in who are struggling just to even get the credit facility and voucher to work. So, yeah, the blackout scheme seems just another gimmick. I can't see it happening. I can't say how it's going to work. And it's just another government way of just kind of rolling through situations without actually tackling the issue, what needs tackling and what people and consumers are waiting for.
I want to ask you about these prepayment meters. We heard over the weekend that Grant Shapps really wants to clamp down on them. Most people will agree absolutely the right thing to do, given that these people who are having their homes forcibly entered and having these prepayment meters put in, often the people who can least afford a prepayment meter. And yet we're also hearing today that the energy firms are fighting back, saying that without them, unpaid debts will actually build up. Who's right here, the business secretary or the prepayment meters?
I think it's a major issue. I think everybody's just talking the talk, as we see every year when these things happen. Everybody wants to keep everybody happy. But let's be very clear here. We're sitting in a situation where we're hitting a very freezing time, as we know, with weather, and the most vulnerable need heating. In this day and age, people should be able to turn on the heating. We always talk about.
But there's nothing,
so last week a bill's gone up ridiculously.
Richard, there's nothing stopping them turning on their heating. They can turn off their TV, they can turn off their kettle, they can turn off their tumble dryer. They have other options with this one. I'm just scratching my head with this. So how can they actually tell? Would they look at my usage and say, Eamonn Holmes is down 5% there, so we're going to send him 30 quid for reducing his electricity? How would that actually work? How can they actually monitor this? And as I say, the amount involved here, £1 million, it's just laughable.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have the smart meters, don't we? I mean, bless us, we look at it and we kind of look at it with confusion what it's actually doing. And I think that's what they'll do, Eamonn. They'll be looking at that, but I have no idea. I'm like you, it's always nice to ask these people when they say they're going to do these schemes, actually explain how the scheme works, because it seems, just like you say, it seems a gimmick. This is what we're going to do, turn off, we're going to monitor it. What they're going to monitor, how do you physically monitor it? To me, it just seems ludicrous, and it's, like I said, to me, it just seems a nice gimmick to keep people happy and give offers to people.
Richard, is I think we'll give somebody at National Grid a phone call about all of this and get them on to try and explain this ludicrous head-scratching move that they're involved in today. But they're obviously expecting increased usage, but it won't take a lot, obviously, to bring things under control. And I love this term about they've got coal-fired power stations on backup for all of this. It's like some horrible threat.
Yes, and it is, and like you say, it just really makes you wonder. It also makes you wonder, actually, in the background, what's happening. I think government are being they're not giving us clear information here. We're hearing all these stories come out. There's always when there's a story, there's always something happening, as we know. It'd be interesting where Mr. Shapps today speaks, as he's going to be announcing actually what he's going to do and what's actually happening, and give us some explanation. Because, like I say, Eamonn, it just seems, the coal fire, we talk about the environment, and all of a sudden we talk about lighting up coal fires. It does kind of make you smile a little bit when we think of what we're trying to achieve, and then we're going back to the old days of coal, everything else. And yeah, it's very interesting. I always I smile at these things, and I shouldn't do when I read these kind of gimmicks, but because ultimately it's the people who suffer, as we know when we were talking about the voucher schemes earlier, as Isabella mentioned.
Yeah, indeed. And we're also going to be hearing from the Ofgem Chief Executive, Jonathan Broerley, giving an update on the energy market today as well. So I think a lot of focus on energy, rightly, as you say, during this cold snap. Richard Bartlett, Director of Export Unlocked, thanks very much for your take this morning.
Well, now for more on the political implications, thank you, and the other big stories. We can bring in former aide to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. It's Leon Emirali. Good to see you, Leon.
Morning.
What do you make of what you're hearing today about the National Grid and who's behind this, and if this got government approval, or, I mean, it's just, I don't know, I'm just scratching my head at this. £1 million around the whole country.
Yeah.
So you can switch off your kettle.
Yeah, well, you're not the only one, Eamonn. I mean, £1 million, how far is that going to go from the amount of households that going to be using the amount of energy at this particularly energy-intensive time of the year? And I think we've seen, really, it's been nearly a year since the invasion of Ukraine, and we still have issues with the energy supply in this country, and the transition to clean energy isn't happening quick enough, so we can't move away in the pace that I'm sure the government would like to. So they're coming up with these sort of crackpot schemes that, let's face it, don't look like they're going to work and probably going to have zero impact whatsoever.
And meanwhile, the government being distracted by a number of sleaze stories bubbling in the background, not least the former Chancellor, Nadhim Zahawi, increasing pressure on him to explain exactly what went on with his taxes. It appears as though he paid a penalty for avoiding tax, which will not sit well with the general public, especially at a time when they're all filling in their tax returns at the moment.
Well, I think that's the problem, Isabel, isn't it? A lot of people around the country are filling in their tax returns very diligently, very carefully. Have I accounted for every single penny of income that I've received? And they're looking at a very high-profile politician who's potentially not paid £5 million. And look, I don't think there's any sort of deliberate tax avoidance going on here. It may well have been a careless mistake, as Nadhim Zahawi says, but I do think the public care about tax, and this is one of those issues that is a big distraction, and I think Nadhim Zahawi will do well to remain in post for the rest of this week.
Well, it's not just the concentration on Zahawi, it's the Prime Minister's role in all of this. Did he know when he appointed Zahawi what his tax affairs were? If not, why not? And so what sort of pressure does this put on Rishi Sunak?
I think it puts a lot of pressure on him, because if we remember on the steps of Downing Street when he took office, he said he's going to be a leader of a government with integrity and responsibility and accountability. And I think we're still seeing those sleaze stories engulfing this Conservative Party government. And I do think that Rishi Sunak's got a challenge on his hand. How does he manage this? That was the downfall, really, of Boris Johnson. And how does Rishi Sunak approach this? Is he going to crack down and say, look, we need to be whiter than white? Or is this going to be a story that rumbles on and causes issues?
What do you think?
Well, look, I think Rishi Sunak has got more integrity than perhaps his predecessor but one does, and I think he is a strong leader, but he's got to be able to stand up to those in his party. There's a lot of different factions in the Conservative Party right now. Nadeem Zahawi's got a big following, so removing him isn't easy, but he does have to say, look, we have to have a clean break. We have to regain the trust of the public, who just see, story after story about one rule for them and another rule for everyone else.
And you talk about his predecessor, but one, Boris Johnson, and we have to talk about him because, of course, over the weekend, in front of most of the papers as well, he's pictured in Kyiv. For goodness knows what reason he's doing in Ukraine again. But usually there's some sort of tactic underway to distract from what he's up to. And on this occasion, lots of questions about an £800,000 loan that was facilitated by the BBC chairman, Richard Sharp. Both of them deny any wrongdoing, but it is not a good look.
It's not a good look at all, Isabel. I mean, first of all, why is he in Kyiv? It's strange that a backbench MP would be meeting with President Zelensky, especially as this story rumbling on about his personal finances. And, Boris Johnson is not in Downing Street, but he's still this huge shadow looming over Conservative Party national politics. And this story about, securing a loan while potentially getting the BBC chairman favour as that job was open, I think it just doesn't sit right with the public. That isn't how things are done in the real world.
Did the loan happen before Sharp was appointed as chairman?
Believe so, yes.
Right, so does that could just cronyism, really?
It wasn't declared, was it?
It wasn't declared. It does stink of cronyism. It stinks of a conflict of interest. It just doesn't seem right. I think a lot of people will be looking at that thinking that isn't how people should be conducting business with these big institutions like the BBC, like the government. Look,
from your experience inside the corridors of power, Leon, during your time, and you'll have been advisor to various ministers and whatever, you were talking about the perception of one rule for them, other rule for the rest of us. Rishi Sunak in the back of his Land Rover making that address, which might have seemed quite well. There he is, action man on the go. I always wonder, actually, why he feels he has to take his jacket off all the time. Did you ever notice that?
Yeah, he's
little dinky action man type thing, that there he is, I'd take my jacket off, full of power.
rolling up his sleeves and
getting
to work.
Yeah. Keep your jacket on. So basically, there he is sitting in the back of the car, and some 12-year-old advisor is saying, oh, your belt is rubbing on your microphone, take your belt off. I mean, are they all just stupid, or are they completely detached? What is the point? I mean, does no one know the rules, the highway code, or anything else?
Look, I'm going to stick up for them a little bit because, I think they're under a great deal of pressure, and there's a demand to get these things out quite quickly. But it is a very, very elementary error there. That video would have gone through 3, 4, 5 different people before it came.
So
onto
they're
his
all
Twitter
stupid,
feed.
every one of them.
They're potentially not just stupid, but they're potentially not very diligent, Eamonn. I think that's the problem. And you want to have those around the Prime Minister. Hopefully, they're at the top of their game. They're as switched on as they need to be to get the country moving.
Well, if it shows something that they're out of touch with everybody else, it's I can take my seatbelt off if I want. That's.
Well, no one knows what he was talking about. All anyone's talking about is the seatbelt gate. I just want to ask you finally about the strikes, because we do have another ambulance strike today. Obviously, you spend a lot of time advising the now Health Secretary, and I was reading in the papers over the weekend that Steve Barclay, to quote, is beginning to sweat over all of this, and that there are possible fallouts between him and the Chancellor, who, of course, used to be Health Secretary, and some people saying he still meddles and wishes he was. Bit of an impasse here. Downing Street edict, absolutely no movement on this year's negotiations. So what's going to happen?
Well, I think there is that tension between the different departments and essentially those who hold the purse strings. And we all know that the economic situation is not looking ideal. We all know that there's not a great deal of money left in the public pot. But if the Health Secretary decides that we need to make some movement here with ambulance workers, otherwise the country's going to grind to a halt, the NHS is going to grind to a halt, then there has to be a level of compromise between number 11 and the Department for Health. So I do think that there needs to be consistency. And I think that it's a job really again for the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, to sort it out, step in and say if there is a difference of opinion between departments, that he's the one who gives the final say. So we have to get to a resolution one way or another.
But he's another one that's anti-inflation, isn't he? So he's not going to be in favour of pay rises.
Well, that's the big issue here, is that you've got pretty much every union in the country asking for a pay rise whilst inflation is rising. So there is an economic question as to whether that's the right thing to do, but there's also public services that need to be running in the way that we expect and that our taxpayers' money goes towards.
OK, Leon. Complicated, obviously. Leon Emirali is a former aide to the Chief Secretary of the Treasury. Thanks for your take and your perspective on things, Leon.
Thank you.
It is 6:16. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
As we've just been discussing, ambulance workers are staging fresh strikes today in an ongoing dispute over pay and working conditions. The Health Secretary said it was hugely disappointing, but that constructive talks were held regarding a pay settlement for not now, but next year.
Police in California say a 72-year-old gunman who carried out a mass shooting took his own life as they closed in. Hu Can Tran shot 10 people at a Lunar New Year festival in the city of Monterey Park near Los Angeles yesterday.
Experts are warning the recession expected to hit Britain could be twice as bad as previously thought. Updated forecasts show a 0.7% drop in GDP this year, followed by 1.9% in growth in 2024. You do the maths.
Lots of chat over the weekend about the coronation and lots of excitement building about what kind of event.
5th of May, 5th of May,
yes,
isn't it?
it's a special
Yeah.
bank holiday, and of course we all got gifted the wonderful coronation chicken, didn't we, when the Queen was crowned?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't born.
Well, no,
I don't know.
Neither was I, but I do love a curry chicken.
I do.
So do I. There's nothing better.
Well, there are lots of things that are better, but it's very tasty.
OK, fair enough.
Very tasty.
But what will be the new coronation chicken? We want to know this morning. Do you have any suggestions at home for what could be the new
dish of the day?
Coronation dish. Yeah.
The dish for the big day.
Yes.
So charge being charged, it's going to have to be something that's
sustainable,
planet friendly.
Yeah.
I mean,
not avocados.
Is he vegan or vegetarian? He only eats one meal a day.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, because he's always walking around everywhere.
Yeah. Could you do that, one meal a day?
Yes, actually, I've become increasingly like that, but it doesn't mean I'm healthy. It means I just eat one huge meal. Because I sort of skip breakfast. Anyway, that's a long story.
I couldn't do that. No, we like your long stories, don't
do
worry.
you?
Yes.
Well, what about you? Don't skip breakfast. You've forgotten your breakfast this morning.
No, I haven't forgotten it.
Oh, OK, deliberately.
No, my wife forcibly makes these...
healthy breakfast.
Yes, but the thing is, I have a breakfast date this morning.
Oh, do you?
Yes, so I will be restauranting somewhere
so Ruth
in a cafe.
Posted on Instagram this... There we go. Look at that, lovingly labelled, even with a printed sign.
That's not all for me. That's her bit. That's hers, and that's mine.
So what's in yours then? Because
I don't know. I never looked at it. I don't know. She should have asked me.
Oh,
did I want
look,
it?
Strawberries, blueberries. I mean, that's love. That really is. My husband doesn't go to the trouble of making... Actually, I say that. He left a note on my handbag this morning.
Did he?
Saying egg, because I keep forgetting my hard-boiled egg. And then I come home saying, oh, I'm starving. So I did go to the fridge and get my hard-boiled egg, thanks to my note from my husband.
Okay,
so there we go.
Yeah, that could be it. But does your other half make you lunch or breakfast, or do you go to work on an egg like Isabel?
Or will Camilla, the Queen Consort, be rustling up a coronation dish for the new king, I wonder?
You know, that used to be an advertising slogan for British eggs. Go to work on an egg.
There you go, I am just the embodiment of that.
Well, there you are. That's exactly what you are doing.
Bit of protein.
What's in your lunchbox? Let us know. After the break, we'll find out why train fines are going up from 20 quid to 100 quid. You see, I thought you could get on a train and buy your ticket while you're on it. Well, I don't know what the rules are saying.
I can't remember the last time I could get to a train without going through a barrier first, so I don't know where you would do that. Maybe in rural parts of the country, but certainly in London it's impossible to get anywhere near a train without being paid.
You know, you could be on an intercity and buy and say, I'm going to buy the ticket, but then of course the ticket operator is bound to look at you and say, yeah, sure, you were going to buy it.
Yeah, they always make you feel bad.
Yeah. Anyway, the weather, I can tell you, certainly in the London area, it's cold, it's freezing, and it's foggy.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The week ahead is looking a bit of a mixed picture. There will be cloudier and brighter days for all of us, but to start off the week at least, it's going to be cloudiest in the north and west, courtesy of this frontal system that's pushing in. This will bring outbreaks of patchy rain and drizzle to southwest Scotland, the Isle of Man and other coastal districts of the Irish Sea, where we've got high pressure holding on in the southeast that is allowing some freezing fog patches around first thing this morning, so do just take care when you are travelling out. The cloud will eventually push its way into Kent and East Anglia, the best of the sunny intervals then once the fog does clear across Yorkshire, the Humber, down into the Midlands and Hampshire. It is going to remain, though, fairly cold in the southeast, temperatures only around 4 degrees Celsius. But further in the north and west, underneath that cloud, it will remain milder, highs around 9-10 degrees. The outbreaks of rain and drizzle just tending to fizzle out a bit as we move into the overnight period, but more extensive cloud pushing into the far northwest with further spells of rain for the Western Isles and Northern Isles. The cloud that we saw pushing into the southeast will also make its way further inland, so that reduces the risk of frost for this coming night. Towns and cities around low single figures here, but there's that slice from the Humber into the Midlands down into southwest England, where it is going to be another cold start to Tuesday morning. Tuesday on a whole then, looking rather cloudy for the vast majority of us. It's going to be that sliver from the southwest up into Lincolnshire where we see the best of the sunny intervals, but generally across eastern areas of England into eastern areas of Scotland, perhaps eastern areas of Northern Ireland as well. There could be a few brighter spells to watch out for. The contrast in temperatures continues, mild in the northwest, climbing into double-digit figures, but much colder in the south and east. That will reverse as we move throughout the week. The milder air will push its way more to the south and temperatures will drop off a bit as we move into Wednesday for northern areas. Have a good day.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
horrible day today is.
Yeah, freezing.
No, something to do with that. It's to do with football yesterday.
Oh, right.
It's ridiculous. It's not worth celebrating today in any way, really.
Yeah, that's why I wore blue, because I didn't want to wear red, because I didn't want to remind you about everything.
It's not just losing, it's losing in the last minute. That's what's the trouble.
Yeah.
And I'm not a good loser anyway. Still to come on today's programme, after Helena Bonham Carter revealed she makes potential boyfriends sit a handwriting test, right? We're going to put pen to paper and find out what your scribbles and our scribbles and signatures say about us. 7:45 with that one.
Then we're going to be asking...
She's very eccentric,
She's
isn't
eccentric, but amazing. I love her. I love her. And oh, my goodness, look
She's
at
on
these
a new
Love
advert.
Island
She's on an advert where she's got her legs up in the air on a sofa.
Love
Have you seen
Island.
that?
No.
That's interesting.
I was a bit bamboozled by the Love Island crew caressing a
Well, how can you be so shallow?
champagne
How can you be so
bottle.
shallow?
Well, it's just distracting. Anyway, single parents are getting their own version of Love Island. It's going to be called Romance Retreat. Will it be as big a hit as these young, beautiful people getting it on in the sun? We'll be asking, is it a positive move?
What's that saying? You can't be older and beautiful.
Not at all, but I
But
think...
you just said that.
I'm asking the question. That's what I'm trying to get this debate. We're having a debate later on.
The
Do we
debate
care if they're old and single?
is love and fanciability only the preserve of the very young? I would say not. I would say not. And as you get older, you still have, what's the word, cravings?
Desires.
Desires, that's the word, desires. So I do think no matter what age you are and what stage you are in life, there's always room for romance.
I do think the audience will be older, though, because young people do not want to think about anyone over the age of 35 and sexy time.
I agree with you until they get having what time?
Sexy time.
Sexy time. Do you go home on a Friday night and say, Liam, it's sexy time? It's not like Chico. It's not like Chico time.
Please, can we're on television.
He used to do. It's Chico time.
Yeah, I don't say to my husband,
It's
"Yay,
sexy
it's Friday
time.
night."
It's sexy time. Do you say it in an accent?
We're going to talk about train fines now, just to really kill the mood.
I just get complaint after complaint which says, Eamonn, every day you talk about real matters, real life, and Isabel moves on to all sorts of
You get
boring
complaints
stuff.
every day, do you?
About you.
Oh, do you?
About you.
Is that mainly from you?
Sexy time. Anyway, how sexy is this? Right. From today, the penalty for travelling by train without a valid ticket will increase from £20 to £100. Take this seriously.
I'm trying, sorry.
Very seriously. Here's a man who loves a bit of sexy time. Travel expert Simon Calder. Look at him in the dark. What are you in the dark for? Where are you?
He's getting ready.
Where are you?
Well, I'm here at Bath Station where an extremely noisy train has just arrived. I hope that all the people who are getting off the train and coming through the gates behind me have a valid ticket, because if they don't, then unfortunately they are going to be hit with a fine. Yes, it is £100, but it's halved to just £50 if you are able to pay it within 3 weeks, but that's up from £20. So an extraordinary raise in the cost of
hold on, Simon. Simon, just clear this up for me. I have seen, or in my imagination, I have seen people over the years being on an intercity train or whatever and purchasing their ticket when the ticket master comes around. Am I imagining that, or is that now not legal, or what's the situation?
Right. Well, I'm so sorry. There was another extremely noisy locomotive going past. Would you mind awfully repeating the question for me?
Can you buy a ticket on a train?
Yes. Right. Well, this is the crucial matter, and thank you very much, Eamonn. Yeah, it all depends. So, if you are getting on in one of the many stations, say in Scotland or Wales, where there is no one at the station, then as long as you kind of get on and you seek out the guard immediately and say the ticket machine wasn't working, I couldn't get one on my phone, I'd like to buy one now, that is absolutely fine. What is absolutely not fine is if you're getting on at a station which doesn't have these sorts of automatic gates that we can see here, and instead you just get on the train, hope for the best, and then the ticket inspector comes along, and if you haven't got a ticket, well, you could expect to be hit by not just actually the fine, but also the cost of the full single ticket for the journey you are making. And if you're travelling, say, between Manchester and London, that's getting on for £200. So it's going to be an expensive old trip. The government says this is...
Simon, I haven't picked that up right. So there's certain places you can buy on the train, and there's certain times you can't buy on the train. That's the confusing thing for me. You either can or you can't, surely.
Holmes is a wanker.
Was that one of my brothers?
We'll apologise for that language. I'm so sorry.
I apologise for that. I had no idea what that was, but my apologies. So, yes, the crucial thing is, Eamonn, that if you have an opportunity to buy a ticket and you choose not to at the station, then you are going to be in serious trouble. And that's why the Department for Transport, who actually have made this decision, say that there's £240 million worth of fare dodging every year. That effectively is coming straight out of taxpayers' pockets. And this is going to be a way of persuading people that they really ought to try. Now, of course, there will be lots of people who are thinking, hang on, the train's going in 1 minute. I've been late because my bus has been late. I'm going to run for it and try it out. Well, I'm afraid they now face this penalty fare. And the idea is that with so many different ways of buying a ticket, in particular online for a lot of people, there's really no excuse for having a ticket.
For not having a ticket.
I hear you.
For not having a ticket, right? Okay.
Thank you very much for braving the cold and the noise and the passerbys as well. We appreciate it. Thank you, Simon.
Where are you going on your journey today?
My life is one long journey, Eamonn. I'm travelling from here into London, but I do have a valid ticket. Thank you.
Good lad. Good lad.
Happiness is a journey, not a destination. Simon. Thanks, Simon.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed.
Oh, dear.
Just after 6:30, we'll be doing very shortly is going through the papers. Dawn Neeson, Chris Sakabusi with that right after this.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back at 6:33. Well, I say it's 6:33. It isn't everywhere where people are watching and listening from. We've just had a message from Rochelle. She says, I'm watching from Jerusalem in Israel. No, she hasn't given us any. Oh, she says, Excel. She says, you are no doubt the best programme on GB News, the perfect team. No one else comes close. Lovely to have Eamonn back, which is really kind. And I just want to quickly read you this one, which is from Thailand. I'm trying to find it now. Here we go. Good afternoon from Thani, Thailand. Udon Thani. Looking for an idea about a Coronation disc? How about spare ribs? Although it might be hard to swallow. That's from John in Thailand. So they're all over the place.
There mustn't be much on the telly in Thailand there. They're sitting watching us. But anyway, it's going to get even better. It's 6:34. Sexy time, as Isabel would say.
I'm going to live this down. Even Ruth just messaged me going, sexy time, question mark.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking about my own lingo.
Well, I'm getting it introduced into our vocabulary. Chris Akabusi here this morning, always sexy time.
Oh, no, stop it.
Leave it, let's not go there. It's too early for that one.
And as for Dawn Neeson here...
Oh, yes. To be fair.
The best bits are even under the desk. Look at this. Look at this.
Wow.
Look at this. My
Your
goodness
boots
me.
are made for walking and they'll walk all over you.
So the front page...
I've strained something.
Before these guys start bringing you the stories in the papers, here's what's leading the front pages. Telegraph, first of all, and this thing about the National Grid planning to pay some of you to switch off your electricity today. Don't believe it, can't see how it works, but anyway. Then The Guardian.
According to them, we are forecast to reach the government's £1 trillion export target 15 years late. They're blaming that on Brexit.
The Mail leads with the rise of what it calls something for nothing Britain, with over half of households getting more from the state than they actually pay in. OK?
And here's the Mirror. It features the scandals facing top members of the Conservative Party, stating it's one rule for the Tories and another for the rest of us.
Yeah. And I would like to start that one with you, Dawn, front page of the Mirror. They still don't get it. And the Mirror have a point, I would have thought, here.
Very much so. It's a very toxic week for the Tories, isn't it? I mean, you've got Nadeem Zahawi and his tax bill, obviously not using a seatbelt, which was Rishi Sunak, and Boris Johnson, who needs a loan. So at the Mirror's front page, you've done it very cleverly. It's like, earn money, well, just pay your taxes. Using a car, wear a seatbelt. Need a loan, go to the bank. So it's been a disastrous week, isn't it? I mean, I would suggest that wearing a seatbelt is probably the least offensive thing at the moment. I mean, you know, as I think you've already discussed on here, we're all actually now, the self-employed, are filling our little income tax forms in and sweating over, have we put the right figure in the right column? And he just lost several £1 million of, like, where's that gone? It's in the wrong... Yeah, we don't know how much exactly, but the rumour is it's £5 million, isn't it? And Nadeem Zahawi has supposedly paid a fine to Inland Revenue around about £1 million. But it was an error. These things happen. And obviously, the Boris Johnson story, I can't get my head around right. So Boris Johnson, who was earning £160,000 a year pretty much as Prime Minister.
Yeah, what about what he earns as a Speaker?
And and sort of like £250,000 for a speech, one speech, and has made millions since he left the office of Prime Minister, and he still needs a loan for £800,000. What is he spending it on?
Well, we know he's got an expensive wife, hasn't he?
And several children. I'm not quite sure how many children, but I mean, so it's the Mirror obviously is a very Labour supporting.
No, come on. I mean, but the evidence is there. The evidence is there.
No, I'm not.
So there's a guy, he gets 800,000 quid, and the guy that facilitates it ends up as the chairman of the BBC.
Chairman of the BBC.
You know, and as for Sunak, I mean, all that business. I know you're saying that's not important, but you know, you could be slapped with a fine if you or I were to do it.
Yes.
So and they're surrounded with advisors. No one see this. No one see it.
Of the three things, I mean, we kind of know what Boris is like. I'm not surprised by that story. I think the BBC angle is a shock in all of it, and Rishi Sunak was a mistake. But to see Nadeem Zahawi, who was Chancellor of the Exchequer, hugely successful vaccine rollout he was responsible for, also set up YouGov, which has been a really great employer. But in his defence, he said that he actually gave all of his shares to his father, all of them. His whole 42% stake in the company gave all of it. That's quite clearly and blatantly. Well, it may not be illegal, but he was obviously trying not to pay taxes.
It's a mistake.
How can he stay in politics?
Well, it's a mistake. But honestly, Labour have demanded a probe amid the cronyism over the Boris Johnson and the BBC boss link and this £800,000 loan. OK,
talking about money, Chris, the story you want is the front page of the Mail. And they term it something for nothing Britain. Over half of households get more from the state than they pay in tax. So they're making a case for top earners here. This is in reverse to what the Mirror is saying. So they're saying top 10% of earners account for 53% of all income tax.
Yeah, but I suspect that the 90% that are not in the top 10% would quite happily exchange places. So yes, over half of the households get more from the state than they pay in tax, while 10% of the earners account for 53% of income tax. The challenge we've got here is that over the last sort of 20 years for sure, we've seen the growth of the state and the role it plays in our life. And so many people have witnessed through the global financial crisis how the banks got supported. And then they've gone into the latest experience in COVID, where you saw furloughs, help out to eat out, bounce back loans, quantitative easing.
But if this was under a socialist government, a lot of people would be wagging fingers and say, told you so. But this is conservative governments.
Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly my point, is that so if I am in the 90% that can't afford to bear the broader shoulders and bear, but of course I'm going to say, well, where's my cut? Where's my bit? You know, because I can't afford to eat, heat, look after granny, etc., etc., etc. So I think it's a bit of a non-story. You know, I'm very happy to be in the position to be able to
contribute.
Yeah, exactly right.
On this programme, we do discuss an awful lot about why, and just to involve another subject in all this, why illegal immigration is such a big problem here. And I do think that the impression is, certainly on the world stage, that we're very generous in terms of our benefits and in terms of, you know, this idea that we have more dependents than ever. If you come to this country, we'll look after you if you're, you know, really struggling. And sometimes we have to ask what that message is giving out.
Yeah. Look, there's a statement, wasn't it, from the World Economic Forum that you will own nothing and be happy. And my fear is this is where we're actually going to, a part where actually we've prepared a polity to expect something from the state, in fact, expect all sustenance from the state, and just be happy with the little pod you've got and a little 5 minutes a day you can go out of your house. Okay. So, you know, this is where I think we are going.
The thing is, it's unsustainable, isn't it? You can't carry on having more being taken out of the state, which is basically all of us, than being put into it. It can't carry on like that. Something has to give.
Dawn, what are you going to be doing
Yes,
between 5 and 6 this afternoon? Are you going to be turning off your TV and pulling out your electric blanket?
According to Isabel, isn't that sexy time, or have I got the...
Stop it!
Well, you know,
so
the difference
Isabel,
between Isabel
out.
and me...
No, the kids will be home from school.
Every hour of the day is sexy time with me. That's the difference.
Oh, God, sorry, Ruth.
Welcome
Thoughts
to my
and prayers.
world.
Yeah, this is the time. So this is, like you're confused by this story, Eamonn. The National Grid is going to pay households for not to... This is the important time, isn't it? It's that sort of like, you know, when you are actually making a cup of tea, you're doing tea for the kids, you're putting the heating on because it's blooming cold, and you're getting home from work. But the National Grid is going to pay you for not doing that. So, but you need a smart meter. If you've got a smart meter, that's how they're doing it. See, they're monitoring you. The state is watching you, Eamonn.
Yes.
Watching your kettle boiling.
Yes.
Be careful.
Yeah.
So they're going to pay you, but you know, if they register your smart meter activity, and if it goes down, then you are going to get a few.
So it's just a ploy to get you to sign up to
for a smart meter.
Yeah,
you saw it. You saw through that. Yeah, that's what they've done.
But you know, the idea that we've got £1 million to distribute all around our 66 million customers. You know, what a lot of nonsense.
I know.
If there is genuine concern about supply of energy and the possible of blackouts and people, you know, actually going cold when they've got -5 outside, or it was as I came into work, why don't the government come out and say, guys, we actually need us all to take a personal position on this, and if you can avoid using power between 5 and 6, do it. Why do we have to give a financial incentive or snoop on people or make it all... Why don't we just say, guys, have a civic mind. Let's try and do this as a nation. Well, I would avoid using my power between 5 and 6 if I was told that might help.
I think people are avoiding doing it anyway because they can't afford it. But Mr. Akabusi might be remember this, but Chris, do you remember the 3-day week in the 70s? And we had in Northern Ireland the Ulster Worker Council strike, which went on for 6 weeks or so. I mean, I can remember being told off in school for having candle wax on my Latin homework, which I thought was quite appropriate. Yeah, because you had to do it by candle. You had to do it by candle at the power cuts.
Yeah, exactly. So when it was really, really obvious, because you had the power cuts, you did conserve your energy. I think at the moment it's not so obvious. Well, it is in your pay packet because it's costing you a lot more money. But you know, when I look at this this scheme here, I think. No, I'm not a pensioner, but I'm a pensionable age. And, yeah, OK, so I can afford to not use the electricity or the gas between those hours. But what if you're a young mum and you've got your kids coming back, they've got to have supper, they've got to get bathed, ready for bed, they've got to...
they've got to watch
do their homework.
TV.
They've got to do their homework, etc. How do you say, but between this very sensitive hour, when you're just back from school, you're not going to use any electricity? I don't see how it works. I think the very people who are probably going to want to be incentivised can't afford to do it because they've got to look after their kids.
Again, it's going back to the previous story about the state micromanaging our lives again. As Isabel said, it's like, you know, you would do it as your civic duty. You know, if you thought you could do it, but obviously going back to your point, Chris, if you could do it, you would just do it in any case, like we did in the 70s.
Yeah.
Do you know, talking about civic duty...
Uh-oh.
I was out yesterday. No, I was out yesterday and I watched this man. This was around Leicester yesterday. And there were people out on the verges of the road picking up litter, and they put them in bags, and the bags were there, say every 100 metres or so there was a bag, and there were volunteers doing it. I've seen this a number of times, and I think the difference between them and me, I mean, I like the idea of it. Would I actually do it?
I picked up some litter yesterday.
Yeah.
I was in Kew Gardens and I saw a crisp packet on one of the lawns, and I went and got it.
Yeah.
But then...
So I do... sorry,
I'm just saying people who have that sort of sense of civic duty who will actually organise themselves and fill up a complete bag full of this stuff.
As well, don't you?
It depends on how connected you are to the local environment. So this is going to sound probably inappropriate, but when I'm on the golf course, I do.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I'm on a golf course and I see a pot, I'll pick it up, carry it in my bag and put it in the bin in the next place. Because I'm proud of my golf course. It's Woburn Golf Course, by the way. I'm proud of my golf course, and I wouldn't want you to come down as a visitor and see a Mars wrapper floating in the pot. So it's because I'm connected to the golf course, and I'm very proud of my golf course. And, of course, people are like that in their own local facility, I would like to think.
I just couldn't throw litter around no matter where I was. I just don't understand it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Talk about things we don't understand, Chris.
Yes.
Can we talk about why Boris Johnson's back in Kyiv?
Well, it's the Boris Johnson show.
He's not Prime Minister. He's talking about we'll continue to give support. That's not his role to say that.
If I was the Prime Minister, I would not be very happy at all. But I think this is a story that works both ways for Boris and for Zelensky as a PR thing. What Boris is showing is very relevant on the stage, and Zelensky is showing this person who has got a very big brand in Ukraine. He was the guy who led Europe a year ago, and showing that he's still involved, he's not left us. But one of the underlying tones here for me is the idea that there may be a jump from Boris to 2 years' time to Starmer, who obviously can't go out there, and that Sunak and Truss were a blip in history, because it's clear that Zelensky really rates having Boris on the PR stage. And for Boris, quite clearly, he can go and do more talks and show how powerful he is.
Hold on a minute, the timing here, right? 800 quid loan story's about to break. Oh, I'm going to Ukraine. Why would I be in Uxbridge, which is where his constituency actually is? Let's go to Ukraine and sort of look good on the big stage rather than actually...
You terrible cynic, I love it.
I know, it's cynical.
Lovely. Dawn, Chris, see you again in about 45 minutes' time. Today's the first day of Cervical Cancer Prevention Week.
Yes, with 1 in 3 of those eligible not taking up the invite for their screening, experts say education and awareness is the key to preventing this type of cancer.
Now, our North West reporter Sophie Reaper has the story.
The words that everybody dreads. I'm sorry, it's cancer. Back in 2016, those words became a reality for mum of 2, Laura Flaherty.
I found out I had cervical cancer after a routine smear picked up abnormal cells, and I was sent for a colposcopy, which then resulted in a diagnosis. I kept thinking, it can't be cancer because I'm not ill. I just fell apart. My first thoughts were for my children, and I just kept saying, sorry. I just kept saying, they're so young, they're not going to remember me. My children were only 6 and 2 at the time. A cancer diagnosis to me just meant death. It was horrible.
After a hysterectomy, Laura was given the all clear. I asked her what that day felt like.
The day I was told it was mixed emotions. I remember sitting in the room and they said, we got it all, you're cancer free. I remember bouncing around the room and the nurse had to keep sitting me down saying, you need to listen. And I just wanted to go and tell someone. I didn't care who, it could have been a stranger. I just wanted to go and say the words, I'm cancer free. I don't think you can describe that feeling of being given your life back. To get a diagnosis and to think that's it. And, there are moments where I thought, this is going to be it. I'm going to die. No one's, my children aren't going to remember me. For somebody to give me that back and say, you are going to see them grow up. I don't think any gift could be better than that.
Today marks the start of Cervical Cancer Prevention Week in the UK. The majority of cases of this kind of cancer can now be prevented, and with better education and more awareness, experts believe that cervical cancer could become a thing of the past.
So we have the potential to dramatically decrease the number of women developing cervical cancer in the UK. Currently 2 women a day lose their lives to cervical cancer. In a sea of quite bad news stories at the moment, the opportunity to consign a cancer to the history books is one that we really need to recognise and for the government to take leadership on.
The Joes Trust vision is to reach a day where cervical cancer is no more. So, how can we each play our part?
This Cervical Cancer Prevention Week, we really want as many women and other people with a cervix to be thinking about having their child vaccinated if they're coming up to that age, or going for cervical screening if they haven't so far, if they've missed an appointment. Worryingly, 1 in 3 women and other people with a cervix, when invited, are not going for their screening. Cervical screening is a really important test. It can save lives.
As research continues and awareness rises, a future without cervical cancer could be on the horizon. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Well, Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust, who Sophie was speaking to in her report there, are now urging the government to improve screening and vaccine uptake for cervical cancer, as almost 1,000 women die from the disease each year in England alone. Let's speak to NHS Dr Veena Babu about all of this. Good morning to you. Look, really shocking to hear that 2 women a day are dying from cervical cancer when, as it was explained in that report, this is a preventable, treatable disease.
It is, it really is, and those numbers they're not fake numbers, because it's one of the cancers that are very slow growing. So by the time we pick them up, the damage might be quite spread. It doesn't always present with a lot of symptoms. So women may, exactly like Laura shared her story, they may feel fine. They might just go about their daily lives and then suddenly get a shock, and the pickup rate is so low because how often do women actually go to their cervical cancer screens? As a GP, I see a lot of women every single day, and one of the pop-up comes up saying cervical smear test due, because there are lots of barriers to why they don't go, but they're just not as frequent at attending. So I would genuinely urge, if anyone's over the age of 25 with a cervix, if you're invited, please attend your cervical smear test screening.
How often are women supposed to be having these smears?
So from the age of 25, every 3 years, and after the age of 50 to 65, it's every 5 years, sorry, the first 3 years, and then after 50 to 65 is every 5 years. Okay. So we do it quite frequently, and if you don't attend your first screening, an invite is sent out again in a couple of months.
And just explain to me why, if we've got the HPV vaccine available in schools and we've got this screening programme, are we seeing this decrease in people coming forward? Why?
So if I'm honest with you, what women have said to me is they're quite embarrassed. They feel uncomfortable. It's word of mouth. So if someone had a painful or unpleasant experience during their smear test, they might tell their friends, actually, no, it was horrible. And that's just what's happening. It's literally those reasons. So shame, pain, discomfort, those are the main reasons they may not attend the screening.
I was also reading that vaccination rates for the HPV vaccine are actually declining. For girls in 2021, it was down 7% and 8% in boys. Are we seeing an increase in vaccine hesitancy in the wake of the pandemic, do you think? Or what could be the reason that people aren't coming forward for that?
Absolutely. So I think what we're seeing is parents taking a more active role in engaging with what their kids are being exposed to, especially after what happened with all the vaccinations with COVID. So parents may decline their child getting the vaccine at school, and that's what's happening. So HPV is a group of viruses that can cause a lot of different conditions, from warts to genital cancers. So getting it at an age like 12 or 13, before children become sexually active, is very protective. So then if they become sexually active and end up spreading a different type of HPV, they'll have a lot more protection. It doesn't fully protect. And now there's also a way, if you don't get your first dose at 12 or 13, you can get a booster up to age 25. So that's something you can look into as well.
Good advice from you this morning. Thank you very much indeed, as we reflect on cervical cancer screening being at its lowest rate in a decade. Thanks very much.
With the time at 5 minutes to 7, we're going to take a break. We'll have more on the potential for blackouts. Are they going to happen? Could you prevent them? Because the National Grid says they will pay you not to use your electricity between 5 and 6 this evening. Though, judging by this weather forecast, highly unlikely.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The week ahead is looking a bit of a mixed picture. There will be cloudier and brighter days for all of us, but to start off the week at least, it's going to be cloudiest in the north and west, courtesy of this frontal system that's pushing in. This will bring outbreaks of patchy rain and drizzle to southwest Scotland, the Isle of Man and other coastal districts of the Irish Sea, where we've got high pressure holding on in the southeast. That is allowing some freezing fog patches around first thing this morning, so do just take care when you are travelling out. The cloud will eventually push its way into Kent and East Anglia, the best of the sunny intervals then once the fog does clear across Yorkshire, the Humber, down into the Midlands and Hampshire. It is going to remain, though, fairly cold in the southeast, temperatures only around 4 degrees Celsius. But further in the north and west, underneath that cloud, it will remain milder, highs around 9-10 degrees. The outbreaks of rain and drizzle just tending to fizzle out a bit as we move into the overnight period, but more extensive cloud pushing into the far northwest with further spells of rain for the Western Isles and Northern Isles. The cloud that we saw pushing into the southeast will also make its way further inland, so that reduces the risk of frost for this coming night. Towns and cities around low single figures here, but there's that slice from the Humber into the Midlands down into southwest England, where it is going to be another cold start to Tuesday morning. Tuesday on a whole then, looking rather cloudy for the vast majority of us. It's going to be that sliver from the southwest up into Lincolnshire where we see the best of the sunny intervals, but generally across eastern areas of England into eastern areas of Scotland, perhaps eastern areas of Northern Ireland as well. There could be a few brighter spells to watch out for. The contrast in temperatures continues, mild in the northwest, climbing into double-digit figures, but much colder in the south and east. That will reverse as we move throughout the week. The milder air will push its way more to the south and temperatures will drop off a bit as we move into Wednesday for northern areas. Have a good day.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
National Grid moves to avoid blackouts by paying you to use less energy as the country faces freezing weather.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. It's Monday, the 23rd of January. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Hundreds of thousands of households will be paid by the National Grid to use less energy today between 5 and 6 p.m. as it rolls out a scheme to avoid blackouts for the first time.
The Conservative Party chairman, Nadeem Zahawi, is facing claims he tried to avoid tax after reports emerged that he paid HMRC £5 million when he was Chancellor.
Boris Johnson has visited Ukraine amidst questions about his appointment of the BBC chairman Richard Sharp, who allegedly helped the former PM secure an £800,000 loan.
And the recession could be twice as bad as previously thought, according to industry experts. We're hitting the high street to hear from local businesses about how they are adapting to conditions and changing shopping habits.
So it is incredibly cold outside, and it is our top story this morning that households across the UK could be in line for payouts if they reduce their energy usage this evening in order to stave off nationwide blackouts.
OK, are you interested in this? The National Grid is launching a one-day trial amid fears of an energy supply shortage as the freezing weather grips the whole country.
Well, the electricity system operator is expected to pay out over £1 million to households who reduce their usage between 5 and 6 p.m. today.
OK, well, earlier we got the views of supply chain expert and the director of Export Unlocked, that's Richard Bartlett, who said that the new scheme was just a gimmick.
A huge response with people who were very worried about, just about, again, the credit. You remember we covered it, and that was quite frightening, the amount of people who phoned in who were struggling just to even get the credit facility and voucher to work. So, yeah, the blackout scheme seems just another gimmick. I can't see it happening. I can't say how it's going to work. And it's just another government way of just kind of rolling through situations without actually tackling the issue, what needs tackling and what people and consumers are waiting for.
We should tell you, this scheme seems quite questionable, but we've obviously approached the National Grid this morning and they don't want to talk about it. I think maybe they might be huddling back in their offices and thinking, whose idea was this? What do you think of this?
Yeah, and let us know if you're perhaps one of those households who's expecting to get a £10 payout today. Let's get the views on all of this from former aide to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Leon Emirali, as well as on all the big stories of the day. Good morning to you, Leon.
Morning.
So first of all, your reaction to this, because I think a lot of people at home, aside perhaps from the payout, will be thinking, goodness me, could we be facing a blackout? Is that a reality in 2023?
I think it is a reality because, we've seen that the war in Ukraine has had this knock-on effect on the energy supply in the UK and across Europe, and we haven't really got a solution to it. So this does, I agree with what was being said earlier, this does sound like a gimmick. It sounds as if, we are doing something to try and help, but in reality, that £1 million is not going to stretch very far across the number of households in the UK. So whether this has any impact, I don't think it necessarily is.
And the optics of putting 2 coal plants on standby in case there is a blackout today, one in Drax in North Yorkshire, the other West Burton in Nottinghamshire. I mean, doesn't really fit in with the green agenda of the Conservatives, does it?
Absolutely not. And, we're trying to move away from those sort of fossil fuel type energy supplies and move to more renewable energy. But when you've got 2 massive coal plants firing up again, well, that doesn't send a great message at all. So I do think it's one of those areas where the government is stuck between a rock and a hard place. We need to power people's homes, but also try and combat climate change.
Should we talk about Nadeem Zahawi this morning? I'm sure he wishes we weren't. Lots of cameras following him over the weekend. He came out with a statement trying to explain his position in relation to this possible fine from HMRC. It certainly seems he's paid at least £1 million. The paper's speculating it could have been £5 million to HMRC whilst he was the Chancellor, so effectively the boss of HMRC.
Yeah, it's crazy when you put it like that, isn't it? And, I think that this is going to be a really difficult week for Nadeem Zahawi. I don't think these questions are going to go away. There could be more digging into, his business affairs, his personal tax affairs. And I do think that we should be mindful that Nadeem Zahawi, clearly a very successful business person, and we need more people like that in Parliament, in government. But you have to be diligent. You have to be, whiter than white when it comes to things like taxes, which a lot of voters care about. So I do think this is a problem for the government, a problem for Zahawi, and it's probably not going to go away.
It's interesting. It's just been a bad week generally for the government, hasn't it? When we've had Rishi Sunak out on the steps trying to promise professionalism and integrity under his stewardship, and that's just not been the case. And we saw James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, trying to defend his government on Camilla Tominey's show yesterday. Let's have a listen to how he tried to do that.
Well, I think that most people would recognise that the Prime Minister failing to wear his seatbelt was a small error whilst he was recording a video about a very important announcement for government funding to some of the most deprived parts of the UK. And with regard to Nadeem Zahawi, I think it's worth remembering that the whole reason that that we are having a discussion is because he has been a very successful entrepreneur who built a business from nothing, employing hundreds of people, possibly even 1,000 or more people, and has successfully contributed to the British economy. And he paid tax, the business paid tax, his employees paid tax. And HMRC said that he was careless in the administration of his tax affairs, but he is now fully up to date with the taxes that he owes.
Do these politicians watch themselves back? I mean, so he's basically saying, well, look, it's OK. He may have made a mistake. He may have paid £5 million short, but he's a very successful businessman. No wonder he's a very successful businessman if that's the way he keeps his books.
It's such a bizarre line to take, isn't it? That, he's founded a business so he doesn't have to pay tax. Well, that isn't what we expect of politicians. And, OK, he may have been seen as being careless. Well, I don't really want someone who's careless around the cabinet table making big decisions on all of our behalf. So, I do think that's a rather weak line that the government are putting out and James Cleverly is putting out there.
But it actually makes people despise him more, I would say. If you don't have an opinion of, say, well, it's OK, he's not like you. He's not like you out there. He's a very successful businessman. Yeah. So he's entitled to make a mistake of £5 million.
And the trouble, of course, for Rishi Sunak is Labour have been trying to labour this point that he is a weak Prime Minister. If he was a strong character, he would say, you've got to go. He would tell him, time's up, mate. And he would also try and clip the wings of Boris Johnson as well a little bit.
Well, he will do.
Around Ukraine.
Yeah, he will do.
He's not doing that, is he?
No, I mean, in a way, it's not a bad set of front pages for Rishi Sunak because he's got Boris Johnson under fire, he's got Nadeem Zahawi under fire, who are, potentially rivals when it comes to Conservative Party leadership. But then again, it points to that broader picture about Conservative sleaze and Conservative unprofessionalism. And I do think that Rishi Sunak has to step up. He has to be seen as this stronger leader. And I do think Nadeem Zahawi is going to be having a very difficult week, and some of those conversations may well be taking place.
Do you think he needs to sack him?
I think he does.
That would be your advice.
I think he does. I think he needs to step up to this and nip it in the bud, because this is a story that's going to run and run and run, and it's a distraction from what the government are trying to do. We've had Rishi Sunak in place since, for a number of months now. We need to start seeing what his vision is for the country, rather than it just being constant firefighting.
And just on the Boris Johnson story, this suggestion that he benefited from a £800,000 loan and then appointed the man who organised the meeting that helped that happen as chairman of the BBC. I mean, is that a fatal blow for Boris Johnson's political future? It feels as though he's untouchable. I mean, anyone else would never be able to recover from that.
Yeah, well, we've seen it time and time again, haven't we, Isabel? But Boris Johnson is not a conventional politician. Those types of issues that would derail the political career of any other politician, Boris Johnson seems to just get away with. And I don't think it's a terribly surprising story that Boris Johnson is looking at his personal finances. We heard that when he was in Downing Street, but it's that BBC connection that just seems a bit weird and a bit like cronyism to a lot of people, and it's not how they do business.
OK, Leon Emirali, always fascinating to get your take. Former aide to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, folks, you're not happy this morning. You've woken up in bad form. A lot of you very cynical about Boris Johnson in Ukraine. Once again, he's showing his face in Ukraine, most probably promising them the world when it comes to us, the taxpayer, says John. He's just a backbench MP now, so Rishi Sunak will feel obliged to keep throwing money at Ukraine while people here have their own cost of living crisis about that. Roger in Cornwall, read the energy situation. So we have coal power stations on standby this evening. Our islands are pimples on the planet. China's not closing down its hundreds of coal-fired power stations. Keep ours open through the winter and beyond while we need them. The madness is we have our own oil and gas under land and sea. Our country is an asylum run by the inmates. And that was one of the more pleasant emails we got on this energy situation and what is going on there. Just in happier thoughts, the Coronation on the 5th of May, and we're talking about how Coronation chicken was born out of the Queen's coronation when that happened. John says, good afternoon from Udon Thani in Thailand. If you are looking for an idea for a coronation dish, how about spare ribs? Spare air, that sort of thing. It could be hard to swallow, though. Spare. There's a joke in that one.
Fantastic. Lots of views. Keep them coming in. We love to hear what you're thinking throughout the course of the show.
Oh, yeah. Keith from Inskip says, a coronation meal, something British and appropriate for the cost of living crisis. He proposes, get this, tripe and onions with mashed potato.
No, thank you.
Have you ever tasted tripe?
But I just don't like the sound of it.
It's tough. It's a funny texture. It's got a sort of grid pattern on it, and
sorry,
it's
I just
very
don't
rubbery.
think it feels very regal. Can't quite imagine.
No, but they're saying it's very British.
It's just not. It's not the one.
It's like eels.
Doesn't get my vote. No, I don't want to dwell on these slimy.
Do you do eels? No. Have you eaten eels? No, they're not. No, I don't like the look of
just
eels.
About managing anchovy, and that's about the limit. Listen, we've got to talk about strikes. I'm afraid there are more strikes going on today. Ambulance workers, represented by 3 union bodies, have walked out in the escalating dispute over understaffing and pay today.
Well, let's go to Paul Hawkins now, who joins us from London Ambulance Service HQ. And what's going on there? Not a lot, I would imagine.
Yeah, not a lot, because the picket line won't assemble until 11 a.m, but when it does, it's sure to be packed full of Unison members. 3, as you say, unions going on strike: Unison, Unite and GMB. Thousands effectively going on. And it's not just the paramedics, it's ambulance staff as well, those who work in the call centres across much of England and Wales. The east of England won't be affected, but England and Wales. And as you say, they're striking about pay. An average, their pay's gone up by 4.75%. That's the average NHS staff rise this year. But they're saying, the unions are saying that's not enough. Stephen Barclay, the Health Secretary, says he's disappointed with more industrial action today. Yesterday we heard from the Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham. She said that the government was willing to talk about anything, but they won't talk about pay. The Unison General Secretary, I should say, Christine McInerney, said a solution to the strike was staring the government in the face, namely an incremental pay rise and not a one-off payment, as has been offered in Wales and rejected by the unions there. The government, though, says that there simply isn't enough money to give them what they want.
OK, Paul, thank you very much indeed for that analysis. Back with you a little bit later on in the show.
13 minutes past 7, whether you're listening, whether you're watching. Thank you very much indeed for your company on this cold and frosty Monday morning. We're going to bring you up to date now with the rest of today's stories.
Police in California say a 72-year-old gunman who carried out a mass shooting took his own life as they closed in. Hu Can Tran shot 10 people at a Lunar New Year festival in the city of Monterey Park near Los Angeles yesterday.
Experts are warning the recession expected to hit Britain could be twice as bad as previously thought. Updated forecasts show a 0.7% drop in gross domestic product this year, followed by a 1.9% in growth in 2024.
A charity is calling on the government to commit to eliminating cervical cancer by improving screening, raising public awareness and uptake of the vaccine. Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust says screening for the disease is at its lowest level in 20 years. Over 3,000 women are diagnosed with cervical cancer. More than 800 die from it every year in the UK.
Well, from inflation and skyrocketing energy costs to the rise of online shopping during the pandemic, town centres have had their fair share of challenges recently.
Well, our national reporter Theo Jacumba has been exploring what this means for the future of our high streets.
Retail has been the mainstay of UK high streets for most of the 20th century, but towns and cities are beginning to see more boarded up shops and falling footfall as shopping habits change. Businesses like this one are having to adapt.
I think the ease of being able to just buy things online, things like Amazon where you can get it delivered the next day, I think that's what kills the high streets. Because I think, well, I'm not off until Monday, so I'll have to wait until Monday and then I can pop down the high street and go and get something. Or I can get it from Amazon and it'll be here tomorrow. But I think people's shopping habits have changed, but then we can adapt to it. We've realised people's habits when it comes to having your hair done, people's habits have changed.
According to the Office for National Statistics, retail sales decreased in 2022 compared to 2021, largely reflecting declines in online, retailing and food stores as a result of the higher cost of living. But for businesses, what is needed to tackle the problem they have here?
In the past, we've had a bigger selection of businesses on the high street, different shops, clothes shops, laundrette, sweet shops, and it'd be nice to see some of that come back. I think with COVID, a lot of people are obviously working from home and were taken away from the shops, doing a lot more online, and it would be nice to see some new businesses come into the high street.
Sevenoaks District Council looks after towns like Edenbridge and more in this part of Kent. They say they did more than ever following the pandemic and launched a campaign to encourage visitors to return to high streets. They say more investment is on the way, £300,000 to launch projects and encourage more people to return to high streets. While investment is welcome, is it enough for what's needed to boost the economy in towns like this?
We're just looking for what is available for the high streets. Like high streets, they're not dead, but they're certainly dying, and they need help. Edenbridge it's a brilliant community, and the high street is the high street. It's in the centre of what used to be a village. It's now becoming a town, so it's getting bigger and bigger, but the heart of it's getting smaller and smaller. So the bigger the heart, the bigger the happier the town.
Business leaders here say there is potential to see growth, but innovation and investment are the only way to revive the high streets and make them more resilient as consumer habits change. Theo Jacumba, GBNews.
Thanks for that, Theo. I think it's very, very sad because there's no doubt about it. You just watch your high street, my high street, Isabel's high street. Well,
all estate agents.
They just nail bars.
Yeah. Hairdressers,
Turkish barbers,
charity shops,
yeah, funeral parlours.
Yeah, there's a funeral parlour.
Quite a few funeral parlours.
And now, increasingly, sort of takeaway food places.
Yeah, and it just is sad. And there's no one to blame except councils. You know, greedy local authorities, greedy landlords, really greedy landlords who won't let you have an independent opticians, for instance, or fruit and veg shop because they're selling out to the supermarket chains for their mini marts and things like that.
Amazon undercutting everybody.
Yeah. No, parking. Local authorities don't come forward with any sort of parking facilitation at all. There's no imagination connected to the high street. And you know what? We will miss it when it's gone because it's about community. If I go down to my local high street, what is good for your heart and soul is that people say, hello, Eamonn, how are you? You go into the chemist, they have a chat with you. You go in to get your hair cut, they have a chat with you. You go into, the local shop. Everybody's talking, the greeting card shops, whatever. And I feel good at the end of it because people who meet people...
Community is so important.
What was that song? People...
Oh, here we go.
People who need people
I don't know, I was
are
thinking the latest
luckiest
theme tune.
people in the world. Barbara Streisand sang that, didn't she?
Yeah.
I know you look at me saying, what's he doing now? But it's people...
People like your singing.
Who need people are the luckiest people in the world. Anyway, I don't want to talk sport. Can we sort of keep talking so there's no time for sport
You just want
today?
you don't want to dwell on this. I'm happy to talk about Arsenal.
I think we should just talk.
Thrashing.
I think we just talk and not talk
Man
football
United.
about anything. Paul Coit with the inevitable after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. Thanks for your company on this very chilly
Not at all.
morning.
Don't
It is
mention it.
7:23.
No, it was hard to get
Thanks
out of
for
bed
turning
today.
up.
Yeah, but it was hard to get out of bed, but I
Yeah.
thought to myself, no, let's do it.
Let's do it. It is cold out there, crikey. But still to come on the programme this morning, lots for you. The actress Helena Bonham Carter has revealed she makes potential boyfriends sit a handwriting test. We're talking about that at 7:45.
And we'll be doing one.
We will. Our handwriting is being analysed. What does it say about us? And in fact, we're going to be analysing Putin's handwriting, Biden's handwriting, and somebody else's. Oh, yeah, Rishi Sunak's. See what that says about them as well.
Also, there's a new version of Love Island coming out for middle-aged single parents, OK?
Rather than these sort of 18-year-old semi-naked.
Semi-naked.
Yeah.
This one's going to be called Romance Retreat. I would have called it Silver Surfers Island. That'll be the third version. And me and Paul Coyte are going to be starring in
Silver
that.
Surfers Island.
Silver.
It's for 40-year-old single people.
No, I'm saying the, next version,
one.
the
Oh,
next
I see.
wave,
I see.
featuring really handsome,
Like
mature
grandparents
people. But think of all the good-looking people who are older, like George Clooney,
He's very happily
Eamonn
married.
Holmes.
Very happily married.
But that doesn't matter.
Oh, right. Well,
It's
you
it's
can't
nice.
go on it if you're
It's
in a
nice.
marriage.
Why not?
It's not a swinging show. It's for singles.
Now you tell me. Now you tell me. Do you think that's a good idea? Would you actually watch if older people were involved? Older people can love as well. Older people have feelings. I mean, you may be bereaved, you may be separated,
Yes,
you may want to start
desires.
again. Yeah, and I'm sure you're not cold, you're not devoid of desires, even at your age. I'm sure it's still...
We're not going there.
What do you call
I'm
it?
totally fine and normal.
What do you call it? Sexy,
I don't call it that.
sexy
It
time.
has been
You were-
described as... I didn't coin the phrase.
You were telling me you have sexy time.
I did not say that.
Sexy time.
I said-
Chico time.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, I don't know. Well, anyway, there it is. And people aren't repulsed by it. They don't look at you and say, look, there's an old person. She's
They might
devoid of
do.
feelings.
My kids certainly look at me and think there's an old person.
And there'd be
Happens
somebody
to the
out there
best
for
of us.
you. If you were to go your separate ways, I'm sure there would be
Stop
somebody.
saying that.
Somebody somewhere. Back after this. Back pages. Do we have to read these? Times, there's all the one story on the back pages there. Here's that Egypt there. Scoring there. Shouldn't have been a goal anyway. Arsenal's
Do you want me to
victory
read it?
against the mighty Man United, it sends them 5 points clear at the top of the Premier League. And I have to say, I think, Arsenal deserve the lead at the top of the league. There's no doubt about it. For the first time, they're favourites to win the title. Star, here we go again. There he is again. Eddie Nketiah. What's his name? Nketiah. I've tried to blank him out of my mind. And he scored in the 98th minute or something. When the whistle should have gone by that stage anyway. And then the Express, also running with Arsenal's wins. No other sport about, for goodness sake. But listen, what about Erling Haaland as well? His 4th hat-trick of the season so far. What a guy he is. Man City beating Wolves 3-0. Paul Coyte is here. Well, before...
Should we just avoid the whole thing? Should we just...
Paul's a Spurs supporter. Arsenal did Spurs over last weekend and they stole it against Man United yesterday. But I think we would both say, when you look at the table, they may be a surprise being there, but they deserve to be there. Top of the table.
Right, this is going to stick in my throat as I cough this out. They absolutely deserve to be there. They're the best side in... Oh, God, this is so tricky to be able to talk about, but it's true. Arsenal are the best side in the league at the moment, and they play fantastic football. You look at Mikel Arteta, and for me, I look at him and I think, God, I hate this guy. He causes trouble and he gets yellow cards and red cards, but you know what? If he was your manager, I mean, not in your case, because Erik ten Hag is a great manager, but many people would look and think, if he's your manager, you'd love to have him because he galvanises the squad, he's passionate, he loves the club, and it just all seems to be working for Arsenal, and I can't see any change in it.
I'm just looking at the top 4, and then 5 points adrift. Well, 6 points adrift. Then comes Spurs in 5th place there. So it's shaping up to be Arsenal top,
Yep.
Man City next.
Right.
And they've played a game more. Newcastle have played a game more. And then United all playing a game more. So Arsenal even have a game in hand with a 5-point lead so far.
50 points they're already on as well.
Yeah.
So, but we are halfway through the season. I think Arsenal fans, and as any football club, you'd always be very worried and nervous to be able to tempt fate and say, well, no, we're just trying to get top 4. But I think now everybody believes
They're the
they can
bookies'
win the
favourites.
title. For the first time, they're the bookies' favourite. And they deserve to be as well.
Yeah.
It's the intensity, it's the hard work, it's just everything you want to see in a football team going forward. And they just...
But yet, Man City, sitting in second place, they have this goal machine, Haaland.
Yeah.
4th hat-trick of the season so far.
But the irony is that there's fans and there's others that are thinking that he hadn't fit into the team and he's making the team worse, which seems crazy, which I think it is crazy because, as we just said, 25 goals he's scored. He's already at the point where in the last 16 seasons, or 16 out of 30 seasons of the Premier League, he would have won the Golden Boot already, where we are now in January. And this is how well he's...
Well, I'd have him, there's no doubt, at United. You may want him because a lot of talk over the weekend that Harry Kane is not going to re-sign for Spurs, and there'll be a year left in his contract.
Sure.
They've got to take some sort of cash for him.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
This year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. With Tottenham, everything's up in the air. They're playing Fulham today. We've got the manager, Antonio Conte, who he's, umming and ahhing about whether he's going to sign a new contract on a huge amount of money already. So it's whether he actually wants to stay and whether Spurs actually want to keep him. Harry Kane, as well, is a similar situation. Like you say, he's got a year left on the contract. He's got to decide what he wants to do. He loves the club. He's about to break Jimmy Greaves' record for the most goals scored by any Tottenham player in history. He's 2 away from that. That's a record that he wants to break. But then, if he does leave Spurs, does he want to break the Alan Shearer record of all-time Premier League goals? Or maybe he wants to go to Spain? I have a feeling that maybe Spain is going to be where...
I have a feeling he'll want a big club, and I think he'll be heading to Manchester.
Do you think he will?
And it won't be City. It'll be the red half of Manchester.
You think he'll go there? I've
think it's
heard
going to be
rumours. I mean, I have heard rumours about Manchester United, but I've also heard stuff as well saying, no, that's not going to be the place he'll go. So how true that is, I think it will be behind, because he'd look great for you, he'd be perfect for Manchester United, and for a team that's doing so well, playing under Ten Hag, he wants to win things. So I think it will be either Real Madrid or Manchester United, and I would think probably Real Madrid, but we'll see. But I think it will happen at the end of the season. But you never know, he may stay at Spurs. I'd hope, but...
Yeah. You never know. You never know. What have you got to say about the Australian Open?
Well, the Australian Open, I mean, the thing is, there's the seeds which are just falling left, right and centre. There's a record that's gone as well at the Australian Open, and it's the first Grand Slam in the Open era where the first and second seeds of both the men's and the women's have fallen before the quarterfinals. You're giving me those eyes, trying to...
No, I'm telling you, I'm just trying to think about that, but...
There's a lot of change, but it leads... I mean, we've got Nadal and Ruud have gone, Iga Swiatek, Ons Jabeur, who was the finalist at Wimbledon, so she's gone as well, but it's pointing in one direction for me, and that is Novak Djokovic.
Right.
Who, of course...
I was just thinking, when you were talking about the seeds falling, it creates a perfect storm for someone to come through, and at the US Open, it was Emma Raducanu's time for that, but it created a situation that she hasn't been able to live up to, so it creates a sort of false sense of expectation, I suppose, for whoever's going to come through on that.
It is. It's still a difficult thing to try and call. I know we keep talking about Emma Raducanu and, oh, yeah, she's not very good and she's this and that. She won that title, and it was a perfect storm. You're right, it was a perfect storm. We're looking at someone like Sebastian Korda. He's the son of Petter Korda, who won the Australian Open back in 1997. And he's a young 22-year-old, and he looks like he could possibly be that player. And it's interesting because there is always one that appears and sails through. But, with the seeds falling, anything could be possible, but I think it's going to be the old hand of Djokovic. I think he's going to be the one that's going to be...
You're seldom wrong, my friend. You're seldom wrong. Thank you. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Good. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much indeed.
Stay with us after the break. Dawn Neeson and Chris Akabusi will be back taking us through your Monday morning newspapers.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back at 7:36. Let's bring you up to date with today's front pages now and start with the Telegraph.
It leads with reports of the National Grid's plan to pay you to switch off your electricity between 5 and 6 p.m. this afternoon. They're not going to pay you a lot, and would it be worthwhile? But every little helps.
The Times says dozens of universities may have risky ties to China.
The Mail leads with the rise of what it calls something for nothing, for over half of households getting more from the state than they actually pay in.
And finally, the Mirror discusses the scandals facing top members of the Conservative Party, stating it's one rule for the Tories and another for us.
And let's begin there, because we're now in the company of Don Neeson and Chris Akabusi. And Chris, the Telegraph front page is one of those pages that are calling for Zahawi's resignation. Should he resign?
Well, it looks like this is going to be a drip, drip, drip feed, and eventually I suspect he's going to have to rethink his position. He's trying to cling on. Apparently, RDS, Ian Duncan-Smith says that, look, get the facts out there, get it out there quick and sharpish. And James Cleverly has said, he's a great businessman, but it's up to the Prime Minister what he wants to do. And Number 10 have said, well, it's not up to the Prime Minister. He's distanced himself from it. And then, so far, although the question is, should he be taking some action? And then there's a former cabinet minister who says of the money that he was careless about, that's a lot of money for an ex-chancellor to be careless about. So you can see that over the next week or so, there's going to be this drip, drip, drip. And it's reminiscent of the way things were only a few months ago when Mr. Johnson was in town, and there was this drip, drip, drip of actions trying to get him removed.
I mean, optics is so bad for the government that I actually think Rishi Sunak should just deal with it today and sack him. When you think there are nurses on strike, and today we've got ambulance workers, people who cannot afford to eat when they're working extended shifts in an NHS that's on the brink of collapse, and then you've got somebody who was careless with multi-millions of pounds,
£5 million
which could have funded a huge number of things in this.
Isabel.
It's just, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I've just put it on my social media. Should he resign? Let me know at home what you think. But I think public opinion's pretty much going to be on the side of getting rid.
Have to be decisive. Make a decision, do it.
Wouldn't it be nice though if a minister at that level didn't wait to be sacked? They just said, you know what, I've done the wrong thing.
Well, the last time I remember that was Lord Carrington over the Falklands, wasn't it? Yeah. It happened on his watch. The Falklands invaded on his watch, and he did the noble thing, and he said, it happened on my watch, I'm resigning.
Yeah, and that's what you want from people at the top. You're not saying that you're a bad fella. You're saying, these opposites are not good. The party is bigger than myself personally. I've got a great business to go to. Thank you very much. I'm off.
I actually think it leaves the door open to coming back at some point if you're honourable about it. If you say, hands up, this doesn't look good, I shouldn't have done it, I'm sorry, it's not right. And then maybe one day, when the time's right, you come back into public life. But if you cling on, you claim that everything's above board, even though you've given all of your shares in the company to your father, and the company itself said they had no interaction with your father, it looks and smells dodgy. And the longer he leaves it, the worse it is, I think.
But it very rarely happens these days.
Dawn, we go to the Mail, page 19. A Labour MP should say sorry for shouting at a female colleague over gender. What is the story?
Well, as we've just discussed, they don't say sorry, do they? And they don't do the honourable thing. Well, this is, we'll probably all remember last week, this is backbencher Lloyd Russell Moyle, who shouted very aggressively, I thought, incredibly aggressively, at her fellow Labour MP and women's rights campaigner, Rosie Duffield. And Rosie wrote a piece this weekend as well saying that being in the Labour Party is actually being like being in an abusive relationship.
What did he shout?
He was just... It was a debate about the Scottish gender self-ID recognition bill that's gone through. And obviously Scotland are going through with it, and Westminster have said, no, it's not right. And Rosie was simply talking about being a woman and women's rights.
She spoke about her experience, didn't she? She said, basically, she was in the toilets and she felt that somebody was looking at her and she was not quite comfortable with the experience. And she was just trying to relate her own existential reality. Sorry, carry on.
So, no, absolutely, yes. Perish the thought that a man...
Oh, my God! Oh, my God!
Thank you, Chris.
Sorry.
A man's finding that for me. No, but this is Pat McFadden, who's the Shadow Chief Secretary of the Treasury, and has said that Lloyd should apologise to Rosie.
So he said that yesterday, I should say, on the channel. Shout out for Camilla Tominey's show.
Yes, absolutely.
Him about it. And because he specifically crossed the House, didn't he? And went and sat next to a Conservative MP who had also been speaking up for women's rights to try and intimidate her.
Literally was
His
staring at her.
behaviour was extraordinary. And we actually did ask on this programme the Shadow Attorney General, Emily Thornberry, about it all last week. And her attitude was recollections may vary.
What?
Everything was fine in the Commons, and I thought it was really shocking to see a female.
We all saw it.
I mean, it was just extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. That's why I'm sorry, because it was so shocking for me to see that at that level, how aggressive. I mean, the finger pointing was really aggressive, and if that lady, sorry, I forgot her name, but if that's Rosie Duffield, if that was her experience in a safe environment like that, wow! Just imagine people outside. So that's frightening.
And it wasn't transphobic. He was talking about being
women's
a woman.
rights. Heaven forbid.
Tell us, Chris, about wild camping.
And this I'm going to get it my own back.
Dartmoor.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very interesting. Obviously, I don't know the minutiae, but I do. I live in a beautiful part of the country, and I like walking out in the world. And there's a beauty about being connected to nature and just being able to walk around and just smell the ambience, etc., etc. And there was 3,000 people basically collected in Dartmoor to protest the fact that Alexander Darwell, it's his land, he's the sixth largest landowner in the United Kingdom, and he's won some rights to protect his land ownership. And I can understand it, you know, if you do own the land, but Dartmoor's a massive land to be owning, but if you do own the land, you do want to protect it, you do want to ensure that your property is not damaged, etc. But what these protesters are saying is that I'm born on the land and I've got the right to roam the land, and I want to have a camp in the land. And I can really understand the frustration, and it's obviously a big tussle here with, you're born in the country, have you got a right to walk in the countryside and to stay overnight by a stream and wake up connected to the earth?
Is there a suggestion that these wild campers are damaging his land in any way? Because if they are, that's a legitimate reason. But if not, then just let people.
That's it. There's no
live and let live.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. So there's nothing in the paper that says that they're damaging the land. And you've got the Ramble Association, British Mountaineering, the canoeing saying they should have the right. And there's a very strange, slippery slope from people's rights to the permissive agreements, and that's the challenge, and that's what they're mitigating against.
Right.
Okay, Dawn, in the Times.
You're a hiker yourself.
I am a hiker. We're discussing this story in the green room, and Chris comes out with this amazing story about how he likes to go walking in the woods at night, and his idea. The best bit was his idea of a picnic is a pineapple and a sausage. I'm sorry.
No. I was saying about litter, and that the problem with the landowner is the litter for people who open up their sausage rolls and their pineapple sticks and leave them in the countryside. That was it. And then you and the other chap went wobbly and started hammering me about your sausage and your pineapple. Naughty, Dawn.
He takes a pineapple to the wood at night.
I didn't say that.
So, Dawn, in the Times, spring is the new summer holiday period.
Absolutely. The travel industry have reported... the travel industry have reported an incredible start to the year. Bookings are surpassing pre-pandemic levels. Demand for spring and Easter has risen by 47%. And the reason it's because summer holidays, as Isabel was just pointing out, the summer holidays are so expensive for families taking your kids away that it's much cheaper in the low season, and that is why people are actually booking to go spring and Easter time. And Eurocamp in particular, a 400% increase in bookings April to June, and because people are mainly going to France, and northern France in particular, where they can drive, so they can avoid the cost of flying. So in theory, it's good news for the travel industry, which is great. We all need help at the moment. But it's because the cost of living crisis is biting so much that summer holidays are very expensive. Although I just would like to add, you could always go for a walk in the woods with Chris. No thanks.
Guys, we'll say goodbye and see you again in 45 minutes' time. Thank you very much indeed, Dawn and Chris, with a quick romp through the newspapers there. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories.
The National Grid has ordered 3 coal plants to begin warming up as a contingency for the UK's energy supply during this current cold snap. It will also allow households with smart meters if they cut their energy usage during peak times. Nadeem Zahawi is under increasing pressure over his tax affairs. The Cabinet Minister admitted he reached a settlement with HMRC following an error over a multi-million-pound shareholding in the polling company YouGov, an error he said was careless, not deliberate.
Family, friends and fans gathered to attend a memorial service for Lisa Marie Presley, who died just over 2 weeks ago. The singer, the only child of Elvis Presley, was laid to rest at the Graceland mansion she inherited from her father. Now, we're now going to bring you various examples of handwriting and what it says about the person who wrote it. We were talking, has our handwriting changed in any way since our school days?
Yes, and this is all because the actress Helena Bonham Carter recently revealed that she actually decides whether or not she wants to date someone based on their handwriting. I don't know quite what the criteria are, but she's very fussy about that. Has my handwriting changed since the school days? I definitely think my handwriting was forced into a certain way through school, and I naturally want to break out of that. And so whenever I'm in a rush or I'm not doing something for public show, my writing does change. But when I'm doing a thank you letter or something, I do very much what I was schooled to do.
Well, we've invited a handwriting expert into the studio, which is a handwriting expert is known as a graphologist, and that's Emma Bish, to talk to us this morning.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Very good to see you, Emma. What does our handwriting say about us?
Well, I can see almost everything about somebody's personality from their handwriting. I can also see how they're feeling at that particular time, and often how they're feeling about the person they're writing to or writing about.
Well, actually, so we're going to have to look at ours first of all to see how we're feeling today. So we have examples. We're going to see if this is Isabel or me. First of all,
Which camera shall I hold it up to?
What have we got?
We're going to Eamonn first.
Sorry, there we are. Right, okay.
Right.
So the words are not important, but we're the famous, this is part of a song, we're the famous Man United and we're going to Wembley. Right.
Okay, so...
That's me.
Eamonn, are you right or left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
OK, you're right-handed. You've got a slight left slant there.
Have I?
You have. I think you know you have. which means that you see yourself as a little bit different from the crowd. A little bit. But you've got these long lower zones, which is a stubborn thing. But also, you say it how it is. There's a slight lack of loops there, which is good, except for your signature, which is slightly self-defensive. You're sort of circling your name, but highly ambitious. And there's an honesty there, which is in short supply, I'd say.
Someone who knows you well.
I'd take that. I'd take that.
Well,
OK, well, let's see what you've got to tell us about Isabel. Here she is. Here's her message.
OK, Isabel, you've got very joined-up writing, so there's something very logical about the way you think. Your middle zone, that's sort of letters like O's and A's, are very large, so your ego is good. You haven't got to, as I say that, I don't mean to say you're arrogant, but you know your worth. Also, the spacing is very regular. So you're a good communicator, you don't crowd people, sense of humour there. And, yes, you're a little bit on the stubborn side yourself, but not as much as Eamonn.
I would agree with all of that. I'll take that. I find it fascinating because I'm teaching my son, well, he's 7, but writing at school, and he's now trying to transition into joined-up handwriting. And, oh, my goodness, he is so slapdash. He just gets it done, doesn't care. And the school also, he needs to take more care. And it just sums him up. He's just not interested. He's just on to the next thing.
It's funny you should say that. I have this problem, Emma, that when I'm writing stuff down, my brain is now 2 sentences ahead and my handwriting can't keep up with it. So I get fed up with writing and my handwriting becomes messy, if you're with me, as a result. Because my mind is ahead of what I'm actually writing. I can't keep up with it.
Well, there's no doubt about it that if somebody's writing a long letter or they're particularly tired, you can see a deterioration in the handwriting. But, tiredness is very different from somebody who's, pathologically got something the matter with them or they're depressed. So, our hand gets tired in the same way as our brain does. So
what is Helena Bonham Carter doing? I mean, if she's saying, I require prospective partners, whatever, to take a handwriting test, how serious is that, and is she wise or not?
I'm not sure what her current sort of romantic situation is. But I wish I'd done it, frankly, Eamonn. I think it would have saved me a lot of trouble over the years if I'd looked for it. Yes. It's a little unromantic, perhaps. I find graphology sexy because it's what I do, it's my passion, but I suspect a lot of partners might not feel that way. But it's a form of psychology, and if you've got the chance to, analyse a hidden part of someone's personality and psyche before you sign up for life with them, then all the better.
What should she be looking out for? Because we've got some examples of famous people's handwriting handwriting, and I want to go to Putin's first. I know it's not first in our list, but I mean, his handwriting, to my eye, looks beautiful. Well, and if I was interviewing him for a prospective partner, obviously it's not in English, so it's quite hard to interpret exactly what it says, but if I was to choose a partner based on the handwriting, I would think, well, that looks lovely. I could totally...
I'd keep a little bit quiet about that.
It's artistic and sort of stylish.
Yes, but remember that aesthetics and something that looks stylish doesn't necessarily make for a great partner. And I think Putin possibly isn't on her a top list of men that she'd like. But talking about Putin in particular, if you can see these rising lines that he's written, there's an enthusiasm there, but there's also a massive amount of narcissism. It's there's a very deep pressure to the writing. You've got these long lower zones, which is about passion, but it's also it's full of emotion, which perhaps we don't necessarily think of as your average
What does the
despot.
slant tell you? I mean, it's like at a 45-degree angle.
Well, that's a sort of look at me. That's a sort of look at me sign. I have to say that Trump had exactly the same thing. But if you look at Putin's signature, it looks like one of those old-fashioned telephone wires, doesn't it? It's loop after loop after loop. And that's really emotion, and it's sort of love for the motherland. It's something that we in the West...
Let's look at Joe Biden here, the way he writes, relatively simplistic looking.
Well, it's not quite as simple as it looks. This was a few years back. If you look at his signature, if you see the very, very sharp slanting to the left there, there's a lot of stubbornness, but there's a lot of also indecision in a weird sort of way as well. The slant is very irregular. He's got something, what we call phallic symbols in graphology. Well, you know, that depends which way you're looking at it, but it's he is influenced by the way things look. And
he's a politician after all.
He is a politician after all, but there's the instability of the slant shows that he can be a little bit moody.
OK, interesting. We've only got 30 seconds. Let's quickly look at the smallest amount of writing we've got, and that's from Rishi Sunak.
OK, more illogical here, Rishi Sunak. He doesn't have a huge ego. There's a lot of indecision. Can you see that the baseline is very up and down? So he needs variety in his life, but he worries about doing the wrong thing, but highly intuitive.
Very good. Emma, thank you very much indeed. So you recommend before we take a prospective partner or employee, we should hire a graphologist?
Absolutely, and I'm your graphologist you need.
Wow, you sell it. You really do sell it. I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to take a break there. We're going to look at the weather. We're going to ask you whether you would shut off your power tonight to help the national grid after this.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The week ahead is looking a bit of a mixed picture. There will be cloudier and brighter days for all of us, but to start off the week at least, it's going to be cloudiest in the north and west, courtesy of this frontal system that's pushing in. This will bring outbreaks of patchy rain and drizzle to southwest Scotland, the Isle of Man and other coastal districts of the Irish Sea, where we've got high pressure holding on in the southeast. That is allowing some freezing fog patches around first thing this morning, so do just take care when you are travelling out. The cloud will eventually push its way into Kent and East Anglia. The best of the sunny intervals then, once the fog does clear across Yorkshire, the Humber, down into the Midlands and Hampshire. It is going to remain, though, fairly cold in the southeast. Temperatures only around 4 degrees Celsius. But further in the north and west, underneath that cloud, it will remain milder. Highs around 9-10 degrees. The outbreaks of rain and drizzle just tending to fizzle out a bit as we move into the overnight period, but more extensive cloud pushing into the far northwest with further spells of rain for the Western Isles and Northern Isles. The cloud that we saw pushing into the southeast will also make its way further inland, so that reduces the risk of frost for this coming night. Towns and cities around low single figures here, but there's that slice from the Humber into the Midlands down into southwest England, where it is going to be another cold start to Tuesday morning. Tuesday on a whole then, looking rather cloudy for the vast majority of us. It's going to be that sliver from the southwest up into Lincolnshire where we see the best of the sunny intervals, but generally across eastern areas of England into eastern areas of Scotland, perhaps eastern areas of Northern Ireland as well. There could be a few brighter spells to watch out for. The contrast in temperatures continues, mild in the northwest, climbing into double-digit figures, but much colder in the south and east. That will reverse as we move throughout the week. The milder air will push its way more to the south and temperatures will drop off a bit as we move into Wednesday for northern areas. Have a good day.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
The National Grid moves to avoid blackouts by paying you to use less energy as the country faces freezing weather.
8 o'clock is the time. A very good morning to you. It's Monday the 23rd of January on this cold and frosty morning. You've got a very warm welcome to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Hundreds of thousands of households will be paid by the National Grid to use less energy today between 5 and 6 p.m. as it rolls out a scheme to avoid blackouts for the first time.
Conservative Party Chairman Nadhim Zahawi is facing claims he tried to avoid tax after reports emerged that he paid HMRC £5 million when he was Chancellor.
Boris Johnson has visited Ukraine amidst questions about his appointment of the BBC chairman Richard Sharp, who allegedly helped the former PM secure an £800,000 loan.
And Love Island may be gracing our screens at the moment, but now a new dating series for older contestants may come along. We'll be asking if you would be watching and if you think it's a good way to find love in later life. Interesting story to begin with. Households right across the country could be in line for payouts if you reduce your energy usage this evening in order to stave off blackouts.
Well, the National Grid's launching a one-day trial amid fears of an energy supply shortage as freezing weather grips the nation.
The electricity system operator is expected to pay out over £1 million to households who reduce usage between 5 and 6 p.m. this evening.
Well, joining us now is the former head of Energy UK and former Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Angela Knight. Good morning to you. Always great to get you on the programme, Angela. Look, first of all, your thoughts about this move to try and stave off a blackout this evening. I mean, we've heard lots of talk about it, but it's the first time this is actually being put into practice.
Yes, it is the first time. I mean, these are sort of long-held plans of National Grid, and I suspect that with the greater use of smart meters, this is going to be one of the ways where people are going to be able to both pay a little bit less for their electricity, but also help with what is undoubtedly a shortage of power in this country. However, the real issue this evening, I would suggest, is not so much that, or interesting trial though it is, it's the fact that our last 3 coal-fired power stations have warmed up. And the fact that we have to do that does really give an impetus on us needing to build more reliable electricity generation, because cold winters aren't going to go away.
And so what would you say to people? There's great mistrust over these energy meters. People think it's Big Brother watching you. What would you say to allay people's fears, or do you think those fears are legitimate?
Well, like everything, there's no absolute yes or no on either side of that question. Do I think they're Big Brother? Not particularly. You know, meters are nothing new, if you like. These ones just happen to send the reading directly to your energy supplier. Where I think they have been misused is what seems to be almost an ability to automatically switch somebody who's got behind, who hasn't paid their bill, onto making it a prepayment meter. So that part of it I don't think is right. It really needs review. That was never what was intended. The original intention of smart meters was actually to do just that, for it to be you to be able to be smarter with your electricity consumption, and for electricity to be charged at different prices at different time of days according to demand. I'm old enough, of course, to remember things like those Economy 7 type tariffs and night storage heaters and all that sort of thing. So it's kind of nothing new in that respect. But the smart meter program has not been the greatest program. It's been sort of sold for all sorts of different reasons instead of directly on the one reason that, you know, it gives a more accurate reading, and secondly, that you can keep control. It'll be interesting to see what this experiment does this evening, how many people take part, how much they get back for it, and whether people do consider it worthwhile. But I say again, you know, it's not a risk tonight because we've started our old coal-fired power stations up, and that sends the strongest message of all, which says we've got to build new, reliable, low-carbon power stations. I said before, these small-scale nuclear power stations are the way to go, but what we can't do is we can't hang back now. We really do need to get a proper grip on secure electricity supply.
Yeah, it's incredibly cold at the moment. Apparently no wind as well, and obviously not an awful lot of sunlight, so a big problem at the moment. Can I just get you to talk a little bit about these prepayment meters that you touched on there? Grant Shapps has come out saying that he wants to look again at it. The courts are overwhelmed with these applications and claims against the warrants. The industry fighting back, saying actually without these prepayment meters, then the debts will spiral out of control. There's a problem, isn't there, for the lowest income households? Not only this, but also the government support scheme, the vouchers are not being redeemed by the people who are entitled to them. How can this all be better solved for those people who most need help with their energy bills?
Yes, there's no easy answer. I wish there was. But I do think that in the long term, or medium to long term, having a social tariff is the way forward. This is something that happens in some other countries, not all, because all countries have got very similar problems to ourselves. I do appreciate that that doesn't make it any better if you've got difficulty paying here, but there is widespread problem across the continent. The social tariff is a tariff whereby there is a reduced price to people in difficult circumstances for the gas and the electricity that they use. There's controls and around that, of course, and like everything, there is an element of abuse which no doubt creeps in. But it does strike me that that is probably a better way than a system, albeit, which does have a lot of support in it, but where sometimes those payments that people are liable for, they don't get, where they think they've paid and they haven't, and they suddenly find themselves in a different prepaid environment. They can't, for some reason, get hold of whatever the voucher is. They're not online, and the whole thing just gets so messy. So whilst the current system is, in fact, not that bad at all, because there is that extra cash available and support available for the poor ends of society, it's a bit complicated. In fact, in many instances, it's too complicated. But a social tariff makes it much simpler. However, the net result for all of us is that we are going to not be able, I think, to go back to those pre-pandemic, pre-war cheap days of gas and electricity, because the investment that's required for net zero is high. And as you rightly pointed out earlier, on days, months like this, where it's very cold right across the continent in which we live, there's almost no wind, there's almost no sun, and we still need to be able to turn on our cookers, turn on our heating, and turn on our lights. So thinking about how we deal with that is important. Social tariff, I think, is an excellent idea for the way forward for the poor.
Got to leave it there, Angela. We've got to switch you off, unfortunately. But thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Let's bring in our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, to talk about all the big political stories of the day. Interesting, this is a huge story in the front of most of the broadsheets this morning. And yet, of course, we're being distracted once again by what could be described as a Westminster bubble story, that not least of Nadhim Zahawi, but also former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Your thoughts on both of those?
Yes, two chairmen we're talking about this morning. Firstly, the BBC chairman appointed under Boris Johnson, a former Goldman Sachs banker, former boss of Rishi Sunak, no less, who has been now discovered to have lent Boris Johnson money whilst Boris Johnson was living in Number 10. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that necessarily there was anything untoward going on, but it does raise some questions about why this individual was appointed to chair the BBC board. And clearly, there are big questions being asked there. The Labour Party this morning calling for an investigation into what has gone on, although not calling for the resignation of the chairman of the BBC board at this stage. They want to uncover the facts. The person they are calling for the resignation of, however, is the chairman of the Conservative Party, Nadhim Zahawi, who was, of course, before he became a politician, elected first in 2010, he was a successful businessman. He founded the polling company YouGov and made a lot of money doing so.
It's worth about 100 million, isn't he?
Yeah,
like that.
Well into that range. And there have been questions over specifics of tax affairs of his in the 2000s, money that was in an independent trust that was in a British overseas territory, and money that was then went to his father, and it's all very complicated. But it turns out that over the summer, between July and September last year, Nadhim Zahawi paid back taxes to HMRC with a 30% surcharge, as it is being reported, meaning that there was, at the very least, some carelessness there in terms of his tax affairs.
And the crucial part about that period of time, of course, is that he was Chancellor at the time, which would mean he would be the boss of HMRC whilst those negotiations were going on. So a lot of people will question whether that was fair, not least when normal folk at home are filling in their tax forms thinking, well, could I be careless to the tune of multi-millions of pounds and still still be in high office, to be chairman of the Conservative Party?
It certainly doesn't look good, and it is also difficult because this happened and it wasn't a transparent process at the time. The government says that, of course, tax affairs are private for private individuals. However, there seems to be a very clear case of public interest in this case. And the fact that we're only learning about it in drips and drabs through leaks and reporting now does raise some questions. However, it is important to say that HMRC now does say that the affairs are settled, that this does appear to be more carelessness than malice. And of course, if you have...
Yeah, but so what category do you put the Prime Minister's role in appointing Zahawi? Carelessness?
Well, I suppose it depends on what the Prime Minister knew about the affairs. Of course, when the Prime Minister appointed Zahawi to become chairman of the Conservative Party, this was a resolved matter. It was resolved in September, which, of course, was 2 Prime Ministers ago. Well, now, that might not seem like the longest amount of time in last year of all years, but it does mean that perhaps when that due diligence was done on those appointments, nothing would have come up as, of course, it was a settled matter by September.
A careless Chancellor, though. Bit of a worry. About judgment there.
Perhaps a worry about judgment, perhaps a worry about what Zahawi might be thinking. Perhaps he should have had a different accountant in the early 2000s. But clearly this is a headache for the government in a week that they didn't need yet another headache. We're, of course, looking at more strikes at the highest tax burden of recorded history. It's a very difficult time.
Tom, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Time 12 minutes past 8. From today, those responsible for multi-occupied residential buildings have to provide information on those buildings to the local fire and rescue service.
Yeah, the regulations are the next stage of new fire safety legislation that's been introduced as a result of the Grenfell Tower inquiry.
Our South East of England reporter Ray Addison has more on this. Ray, tell us all.
Yes, good morning to you both. It was just before 1 a.m. on the 14th of June 2017 that a fire broke out on the 4th floor in a kitchen. It quickly spread to the outside of the building and then shot up all 23 stories and all 4 sides. 72 people died in what has become one of the worst tragedies in the UK in modern history. Now, today, new building regulations come into effect, as you said, and what they mean is that a person has to be responsible for that building, and their responsibility is to inform local fire and rescue of the construction of the exterior walls and the floors as well. And the idea of that is that fire and rescue services will have time to plan and prepare in case such a tragic incident happens again. And this is all part of the recommendations of the Grenfell Tower inquiry. Now, joining me to discuss it is Joe Delaney. He is a representative from Justice for Grenfell. Joe, do you feel like these recommendations go far enough?
I welcome the 2 recommendations that are about to be implemented today, but I do think it's too little, far too slowly. At this rate, we won't have all of them implemented until about 2065 or so. There's over 100 in total. 2 is not good enough.
So what other measures do you and Justice for Grenfell want to see implemented?
I think the most important ones are that we get named individuals within organisations who would be responsible for corporate manslaughter charges. It's only if the people in these boardrooms feel they've got skin in the game that they'll actually give any kind of damn about the people whose lives they put at risk. Until then, it's just the cost of doing business.
Now, it's been 5 years since Grenfell tragedy took place. These recommendations are coming in now. You mentioned you predict that to fully implement all of the Grenfell Tower inquiry recommendations could take a very long time. Progress is slow.
Progress is slow. I mean, when you look at how fast the government have moved, say, to outlaw striking and things like that, you know that when the will is there, so is the way. The government needs to remember the way they promised us 5 years ago that this will be dealt with, and it is not at this glacial pace. But the council and the government need to do far more, far quicker.
Joe, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Now, we wrote to London Fire Brigade for a statement, and they said this is just the beginning in terms of improving the fire safety of residential buildings. We're calling for a culture change in the industry. We must ensure that new buildings of all types are built safely from the outset.
OK, Ray, thank you very much indeed. Just about make out Grenfell Tower through that fog here in London this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of the news stories today. Ambulance workers are staging fresh strikes in their ongoing dispute over pay and working conditions. The Health Secretary said it was hugely disappointing, but that constructive talks were held regarding a pay settlement for 23-24.
Experts are warning the recession expected to hit the UK could be twice as bad as previously thought. Updated forecasts show a 0.7% drop in gross domestic product this year, followed by 1.9% in growth in 2024.
A charity is calling on the government to commit to eliminating cervical cancer by improving screening, raising public awareness and an uptake of the vaccine. Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust says screening for the disease is at its lowest level in 20 years.
Now, excitement's really building ahead of the coronation of the King. We heard all the details, didn't we, over the weekend about what will happen with 2 grand processions planned, a religious service, a star-studded concert outside Windsor Castle and a day of volunteering.
So what does our royal correspondent do? He comes into the studio today with some coronation chicken. So why is that, Cameron?
Coronation chicken, Eamonn, was the dish prepared for the coronation banquet of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953. And we thought it would be a good idea to perhaps create another dish for King Charles III's coronation. Of course, it's a long list of kind of royal dishes prepared for various events. Only last year, didn't we? We had the platinum pudding, that kind of lemon trifle, which was made via that competition.
So how popular was that?
Well, I don't think it was as popular as Coronation Chicken.
Right.
Somehow Coronation Chicken has managed to last 70 years or so, whereas the trifle, I can't think of another...
It was too fussy and fiddly.
It was quite hard to make.
Delightful, but I wasn't going to rush out and make it. Coronation Chicken's so easy, isn't it?
Exactly.
And it's just a great way to use leftovers as well, which is the sort of thing the King would probably approve of, sort of sustainable. But we're asking people, aren't we, to get in touch with ideas of what could be a royal recipe to celebrate his coronation. Charlie, our producer, thinks that there should be a coronation naan to accompany the coronation chicken.
Well, that's a good
very
idea.
cost of living and simple, and it would be diverse as well in a sort of modern Britain, which would chime
you want
across
something like sausages.
with everything that he's saying.
No, you want something...
processed meat. You're not
Who's going to make a
Something
bit of our
British.
bread? Nobody's going to bother with that.
Yeah, my other half suggested maple salmon because it's Canadian maple syrup, Scottish salmon steak, so it's the Commonwealth, the family of nations, which I thought was quite a good suggestion. We do have some views as well from viewers.
Yeah,
Keith says something British and appropriate for the cost of living crisis, as you said, Isabel. Tripe and onions with mashed potatoes. I'm not quite sure how appetising that would be.
I mean,
traditional.
It's very British,
Traditional, very British.
but I'm not sure it's sort of royal.
Do you know what tripe is?
It's a type of stinky fish.
No, it's stomach. It's a cow's stomach, isn't it?
Oh, I thought it was like eel or something.
No.
Is it like offal?
No, it's the stomach of a cow or a pig or something.
Yeah, sheep or something.
Have you
I've
ever
never
had it?
tried it, no.
Have you? Amy?
Yes.
Did you get brought up on
Oh, in the 60s, we were so poor. That was a speciality
That was
for
like
us, a
steak and
delicacy.
kidney or
We had
tripe?
pig's feet,
I've
tripe.
had tongue before.
We had heart, we had tongue. Yeah,
it's very
all those
salty.
things. Yeah.
Yes. And we've got Scottish haggis, of course, this month for Burns
Haggis?
Night.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's Wednesday, isn't it, Burns Night?
Indeed. John says, how about spare ribs? Although that might be quite hard to swallow.
It's
Of
a bit
course, a
of a play
reference
on
to
the
Prince
book.
Harry's memoir, which was published this month. So, yes.
So what do you want to do? You want folk to get in touch with you today or us today about this?
Yes, if you email your recipe suggestions to gbviews@gbnews.uk, we're going to collate them all and then air some of the best recipes for people to try at home ahead of the coronation.
Good one.
idea.
Be ready for it. Be careful what you ask for, Cameron. But anyway, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Would you ever go on Love Island, Cameron?
No,
You're already in love.
I'm already in love.
Look, why do you spoil the story all the time?
It's true.
No, I think there's too much pressure if you go on Love Island. There's a lot of social media pressure.
Do you know what? That's why I said no.
Yeah.
That's why I just thought the pressure. No, not
Exactly.
I might hold out for Silver Surfer Island.
Yes, there's a more mature Love Island, isn't there?
Mature
coming
Love
out?
Island. But anyway, this one, they haven't got actually to that top level of oldies, but they've got sort of middle-aged people and they're going to be single
They're going to be
parents.
single, Eamonn, so that disqualifies all of us. It's a minor detail. But we will be talking about how to find love if you are over 40 after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. It's 8:24. Still to come on the programme this morning.
At around 9:10, we're going to be talking to GB News presenter Beverly Turner, who, well done, she won a big award at the Inspirational Women Awards at the weekend, and she beat the field, and it was thanks to a viewer's vote on that. So GB News viewers and listeners, thank you on behalf of Beverly. I'm sure she'll do it herself at just after 9 this morning.
And just after that, Andrew Pearce will be joining us in the studio for his take on all the big stories of the day.
And you can join in any of the discussions, which you'll be doing very well today on gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News as well. So Daryl says, we were talking about a dish for Coronation Day, which is on the 5th of May. I'm sure the royal family would absolutely love to delve into a real portion of jugged hare, just to play on the older traditional dish of jugged hare. Oh, hare. So there's such a thing, such a dish as jugged hare.
Yeah. Jugged hare, yes.
What is that like?
I think it's some sort of hare done in a hair like it's in the rabbit.
In a jug.
think it's done in a pot of some sort. Jagged hair.
Oh, dear.
We should explain who our guest is. Gaynor Evans is joining us here explaining this. We are talking now about a new dating series called The Romance Retreat, which centres around single parents looking for a second chance at love.
OK, well, now this programme has been dubbed the middle-aged Love Island, which sees singletons in their 40s and their 50s looking for a potential partner.
But do shows like this only really work for the young, or does everyone deserve a chance to find their
Well, of course they do. Of course they do in this ageist world, in this ageist society. So you've met Gaynor Evans, dating blogger. She says, yeah, she wants to see a programme like this.
Yes.
Older people have split from partners who have been bereaved. They have sex appeal too. But beside me, Julie Cook, who says, no one needs a Love Island with beer bellies. Cruel. Really? Do you think it's just purely down to the aesthetics? Could it possibly be that shallow?
Well, I think people only watch Love Island, really. They certainly don't watch it for the intellectual discussions. I think they only watch Love Island for the pecs, the boobs and the white teeth. So I can't see how it's going to work, the same format, I can't see how it's going to work for the older cohort.
But 40s, I know loads of 40-year-old guys are in great nick, got six-pack still but great with the shirt off.
But they've said, haven't they, and some of the things I've read about it so far, they've said we're not necessarily looking for the perfect bodies anymore, we want the real thing. So, you know, who knows what it could be.
Gaynor, what do you think?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I think it's about time we had something for the older age group. I mean, sex and love is not just exclusively for the young and firm, maybe for the not so young and infirm, but it should be, I think, the net should be spread wider. I'm not sure changing the format is necessarily required. They seem to be involving children in this, or the person's children. They seem to get a vote on whether or not which man or woman you pick. I'm not sure how it's going to work exactly, but it's about time we saw some real bodies.
What's that show called with Fred Serio where they go off to a hotel and they get served...
First Dates.
First Dates Hotel.
Yeah.
They often feature older couples. And I have to say, I watch it with my husband and we always love it when the oldies find love on the show.
Yeah.
It's really lovely.
I mean, I'm not sure exactly the age group. I did look at the application form and it said 40 plus, so it could be any sort of... 40s, 50s. I mean, how I'm not sure how old they're going to go.
Should go the whole way, all the way into the 90s.
They should. Maybe they'll do a, you know, Silver Surfers one. I don't know, but...
yeah, well, what do you think? How old will they go, or what do you think the restrictions? You don't think they're going to concentrate on the beer bellies and the various other aesthetics?
No, from what I've read, it's 40s to wherever, and they're not after particularly the Love Island traditional look. So that's... I mean, let me just do a disclaimer. I am all for older people finding love. I'm all for them showing real bodies, for sure. I mean, I think the Love Island concept is quite dated now, the perfect teeth and all that. I just think it's, you know, it's had its day. However, my concern with this is, if they're not going down the looks path, they're going to look for people with really good backstories, and good backstories means trauma, drama, perhaps they're widows, widowers, people who've had many divorces, people who've been cheated on. My worry is that could lead to exploitation or mental health problems or who knows what. That's my concern. I don't think it's going to be as light-hearted as Love Island.
Yeah, but wouldn't the older person be able to handle all that drama better than the younger one, don't you think?
Possibly.
Wouldn't they have the experience of life to be able to actually cope with that better? And also
experience of life and experience of media exposure, I suppose, are two different things.
Yeah, I suppose so. You'd have to... I imagine they'd have to be very carefully vetted.
Do you want to apply?
I have applied.
Are you actually going to go for it? Oh, that's fascinating.
I did actually apply. I wanted to go through, because we were talking about it, I wanted to go through the process to see how involved it was. So I did actually do it.
But do you have love in your life, Gaynor?
Here and there, thank you. Yes, I do.
No, I was just... why I'm asking you is...
I'm single, perpetually single, me. Oh. Perpetually single, yes.
So what do you think the difficulty is as you get on in life with finding a partner?
I think, having been married twice and having found my freedom, and I do date all the time and different, you know, people, but I think giving up my freedom that I feel I really fought tooth and nail to get. I'm a bit reluctant to, I think, share my whole life with someone, and finding someone that wants to just sort of dip in and out.
So to speak.
That's why, so to speak, is why probably I end up sort of dating the younger age group.
Do
because
you?
that's what
You're a
suits.
cougar.
I am a cougar.
Terrible
yes.
phrase.
Yeah.
Good for you.
No, that's me.
And Julie, what about you? How do you view, as we all get older, it doesn't necessarily reduce your interest in finding a partner, a life partner?
No, of course not. No, of course. In fact, I think, perhaps it makes that stronger because you want to spend the rest of your days with someone, whereas when you're young, perhaps you go on Love Island just to become a celebrity, to get... whereas I think this won't be...
It's getting serious when you get older, then. It's getting more
serious. I think it probably does. Although, I've been chatting to Gaynor before, Gaynor's having the whale of a time, so I don't know.
I am slightly, the sort of the person that probably hasn't... I've been conventional, very conventional, and followed the rules, and I've gone a sort of bit crazy.
Well, there's all these apps, aren't there, and all these websites and ways you can find partners these days. And I did hear somebody who runs one of these dating apps saying once that you should just never leave love, the most important decision of your life, to chance, to fancying someone and chemical reactions, because that all just... evaporates. And actually, if you allow some profiling and algorithms and actually experts to find you, to match you, and that's what I think I like about that Celebs Hotel one that we were talking about.
First dates.
They seem to have really matched people sometimes in a way that perhaps you wouldn't do if you'd let it happen organically.
Yeah.
Perhaps there are some advantages.
That's a good... Your example there, I think, is good, whereas I think Love Island is a bit... It's not going to do that sort of subtle nuances of trying to get people together. It's just throwing people in who, as you say, Eamonn, might not have media... I mean, you're media savvy, Gaynor, you are, but a lot of them won't be.
No, I know.
And they won't have any clue of how much trolling they're going to get potentially, or look at that cellulite, look at that big up, because it's not traditional Love Island. And I just worry about the fallout for people afterwards.
The things falling out from people, no doubt, as well in their beginnings. But I do remember once on Big Brother that I think it was Denise Welsh that was in and out of her. She looked wonderful. She was in and out of the jacuzzi, and there was this terrible outcry about, oh, she's too old to be doing that. She shouldn't be in and out of it. And I thought it was dreadful. We are still a very ageist community, I'm afraid. Which is all wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, and it's funny how your perspective changes and what you still find attractive or differently find attractive as you get older. But there you go. I mean, little did I think there would be loads and loads of women out there fancying 60-plus-year-old men.
Whoa, really?
Who just fall, just swoon when you go into the room. Swoon.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if you've got it, Eamonn, haven't you?
Wait till they make that Silver Surfers programme. Very good to speak to you. That's Gaynor Evans, who's a dating blogger, and Julie Cook, who's a journalist and author as well. Thank you both very much indeed. So that's a show going to come your way on telly soon. It's called The Romance Retreat. Would you go on it? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a good idea to just break down barriers and say, it's funny what we term as old people, as if 40-year-olds are old. Well, are you only 40?
Oh, stop it. Don't start this again. We're going to take a break. I'm going to give them a couple more punches, and we'll be back with Dawn Neeson and Chris Akabusi after this. mind us. We're just choking on our tea. Welcome back.
The things that go on
8:37.
during the commercial break, that's the things you should know. Due to this woman here.
It's Dawn Neeson in her naughty boots.
Yes.
Causing trouble. And Olympian Chris Akabusi in his naughty laugh.
Yeah.
Here to entertain us. And we are going through the papers one last time.
Let's, do you know what I want to start with? Sorry. A good debate to get us going. In the Telegraph, men let women pick up the slack on housework when both work from home. So the suggestion is here, that given the chance, men would happily let women do the majority of housework.
This is it. This is 2 independent studies and reported in the Personal Psychology Journal, so I read these sort of things, and they have shown that when both partners are working from home, that the women end up doing most of the housework. And I actually have to say that in my house that's not true. Thank you, darling.
Okay.
He does everything. He looks after me, he cooks, he shops, he does everything. He's brilliant. However, most of you are rubbish.
Mrs. Pearce.
Mrs. Pearce, well, Mr. Pearce is also brilliant. He is not particularly domesticated in terms of tidiness, but we share the roles. He does the grim stuff like the bins in the garden, and I'll do the laundry. He does a lot of the cooking, so I haven't got...
And you do sexy night. Her words, not mine. Her words, not mine. But I reckon, Mr. Akabusi, you being ex-military, you're well house-trained. No?
Oh, definitely not. Mr. Akabusi lives on his own for a reason. He's Mr. Untidy.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm awful. No, I'm not.
You want your golf course to look immaculate, but your house is a tip.
Yeah, because I'm the only one who lives in my house, so it doesn't matter what it looks like.
I thought you'd be polishing your shoes, arranging the cutlery drawer. I thought you'd have everything military precision.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got a beautiful garden, but then I've got a gardener.
Oh, my God.
Okay. So if we take a vote on this, is housework shared equally between men and women? You would say, Dawn?
I would say for most couples, probably not. I would also like to point out these surveys were done in China and Korea.
Okay.
I didn't want to ruin the story.
Definitely Mrs. Holmes does everything and more. Yeah.
Oh dear. You know, I would say it's probably a generational thing. I don't think guys can get away with it anymore.
When I was married, my ex-wife was a German, and she was absolutely picobello sauber, absolutely, totally clean, everything perfecto mondo.
It's a wonderful, attractive quality, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You love a woman that can take care of
my
you.
wife, she did bring up our youngest son, and she said, I am not going to bring another useless man. So he cooks and cleans.
Well done, Ruthie.
Team Ruth, go girl.
Absolutely. I drill my son as well and helping out. Right, let's get into the news then. Chris, you want to talk about Sajid Javid's call facing backlash. What's he calling for?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Sajid Javid himself was once the Secretary for Health, and he's having a look at the health system we've got now. It was once the envy of the world. You know, 75 years ago, it was a bastion. It was forward thinking, and you know, we've got an affinity with our NHS, but sadly, it's not working. And so we have got to have that uncomfortable discussion around how do we recalibrate it for the 21st century, even though that we're 5% or 20% already into it. And his idea is, looking around in Ireland, for example, if you have an emergency work, you have to pay €75. In Norway, you pay £20 to see your GP. And so he's floating the idea and seeing how it would work here in the United Kingdom. But the argument against it is a slippery slope into privatisation. It affects the poorest, and for those who at least can afford to pay, the poorest people will think twice about going to their GP or going to hospital, you know, and a sort of mild illness could become chronic. So you can see some of the challenges it's got. And then another one will be, well, OK, that's very good, but what's going to be the cost to put the system into place? And does the cost outweigh the benefit? So there are lots of arguments against it, but we have to have an argument about NHS.
Absolutely. I mean, the population has grown so much since it was created in 1948, and we age so much longer. Is it sustainable to be free for all for all of life, from birth to death.
And the answer is, it's not.
And it's not.
No, it's not.
It's just not. I think you have to agree on that.
So you think most people would be up for, some sort of small cost, if they can, if it was affordable to them, means tested?
Well, yeah, I think so, but then again, you'd have a challenge with mean testing, because if you're going to fly in colours, great, but what if you are on the border, would it become stigmatised? Would people know those who couldn't?
And plus, would it put people off going?
To see the doctors?
If you had to pay, I don't know, say 10, 20 quid to go and see a GP appointment, but it meant you got that GP appointment within a day or so, rather than 3 weeks, I'd more than happily do that.
Yes.
System. But if you were borderline,
yes,
would it put you off going?
Well, that's exactly what I said. So someone who's on borderline, who's got mild symptoms, might not go, and unfortunately, by the time they get to it, it could be a chronic, devastating position. So that's the argument against it.
OK, let's turn our attention to the Mirror now, Dawn. Tory MP's vile rant at food bank users. This is about Lee Anderson. What's he been up to?
Well, this is an ongoing saga, isn't it? Tory MP Lee Anderson is a former miner, and he has said that there is a whole industry now behind the food bank situation, and he said in a lot of cases people using food banks are wasting their money on fags, booze and non-essential and non-priority debts. Sky TV or Virgin Media, there's a lot of money that could be saved. A very, very controversial view, and obviously this has annoyed a lot of people. It's a very divisive debate. Fellow Tory MP Simon Clarke has also defended his claim, saying that nurses using food banks are not budgeting properly, referring to the fact that people on £35,000 a year need to use food banks. Do they really? It's a huge debate. I know Lee is a big part of the GB News family. It's a very controversial view, but I mean, does he have a point? I mean,
it definitely has to be talked about. You have to ask questions about whether or not, if you're giving stuff out for free, will people come? You build the ark, they will come. Or are there hoops that you have to jump through to prove that you need it?
Sorry, Dom, I don't want to talk over you.
How very dare you talk over me? What is mansplaining a gay friend?
No, but the difficult... Sound like a busy.
Go on, get on with it.
We will come to you.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, it's if we don't talk about it, we're never going to get to the bottom of the situation. And I do think I'm not saying that food banks are wrong and people don't use them really, but we do have to accept there are some people in this world who will take advantage. And until we acknowledge that fact and be free to talk about it, like Lee has quite rightly raised this issue, everyone immediately screeches you down. But unless you talk about something, you're never going to sort the problem out.
Yeah, you should be allowed to ask the question.
The difficulty, but even the person that takes advantage has to be in a position where taking advantage is an advantage. And it's very difficult when you got, and I don't know Lee Anderson, probably a lovely lad, a lovely man, should I say, but if he's a politician, he's on 84 grand a year, someone on 84 grand a year plus, talking about somebody who's on 36 grand a year who goes to the food bank, it's just not a good look. We have got to have the discussion, I do understand that, but it's just not a good look because you don't know where the shoe pinches.
Yeah.
Pot calling kettle black. In the Star, the head of Tesco talks about food manufacturing companies, accuses them of being greedy, hiking prices for no good reason. The reason I say this is these are the people who absolutely turn farmers into the ground, they absolutely squeeze, and 100%. I don't think any supermarket is a friend of farming and local produce and whatever, but however, what is his gripe, Chris?
So you're smack on, I'm right down the line with you there. It's again, not a good look. The supermarkets squeeze the suppliers, they squeeze the producers, they rinse every single bit of profit out of that. In the pandemic, it was the retailers, they had what's called a double peak. They had the peak in 2019 of Christmas, and then they had an even bigger peak of profits in the...
panic buying and people hoarding food and all this sort of thing.
So they really creamed it.
So they basically, I'm trying to think of another word here, but they basically can... I've got one word in my mind which I can't say, but basically they can turn the screw on food manufacturers, except they can't with the Heinz and the Kellogg's and the whatever it happens to be, and they don't like it because obviously Tesco and supermarkets like them think there's only one person should be making profits or one company, and that's their company.
Yeah, exactly. And they're fighting back. I mean, like you said, I mean, Unilever, Hellmann's 42% increase, Heinz Soup 73% increase. So there's some naughty profiteering going on, but the whole industry needs regulation, and I know it's regulated, but they're not doing a good job. Labour's Sir Chris Bryant branded it shameless profiteering. It's clear that shameless profiteering has gone on in the retail sector, and it needs to be looked at.
But the war in Ukraine and whatever, wheat prices, supply problems, whatever, put pressure on all these companies, there's no doubt. And if you've ever gone into a restaurant recently, you will see the massive increase in prices.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah.
But that being taken into account, though, you know, energy is coming down, inflation is looking like it's going to come down. Do you think the prices that they put them up to now, do you think they'll come down commensurately in the future? No, they're up there.
Yeah.
You've paid for it, and you'll continue to pay for it.
I just want to ask Chris, how has it affected the price of pineapple and sausages?
Bro, she's gone there again.
Question for another day. Got to cut across you guys because we've got Jonathan Reynolds, who's the Shadow Business Secretary here, because households will be paid to reduce energy usage between 5 and 6 today. Let's get Labour's view on this from the business and industrial strategy point of view. Jonathan Reynolds, this idea from National Grid that they've set aside a paltry £1 million if you back out of your energy usage today between 5 and 6. What's your view overall?
Well, good morning. Yes, it seems another appropriate day to be talking about this. It's freezing here in Parliament. But look, there's a lot more that can be done in terms of how people use energy, how they learn about efficiency, and the time of day that they use it at. I'm all for that, but I think we've got to be frank and say, when you compare energy bills today to just a few months or a few years ago, the kind of pressures people are under cannot be resolved by measures like this. What's needed alongside it is that commensurate support from government. So obviously under our plans we have a more expansive windfall tax than the Conservative Party has brought forward to pay for its plans. We just started it earlier. We wouldn't have those big gaps for fossil fuel investment. We would have more resources, so we wouldn't, for instance, see the reduction in the level of support this April that households would have, and we'd also provide more support to businesses. So look, yes, I'll try innovation, new ideas, absolutely, but let's be clear, households and businesses still need some support this April to a higher degree than the government have brought forward so far.
Well, as you say, I mean, the government have paid out billions of pounds in support already. And as you say, extending that windfall tax by, I think it's 3 months you're planning, isn't it, at the moment? Is that not a deterrent to the energy firms? I mean, we've already heard, haven't we, over the last few days, Shell saying that they're thinking again about a £25 billion worth of investment in the energy sector. Harbour Energy saying that the current windfall tax that the government has is making them make cuts. So if you take a further windfall tax, actually you could end up with people losing jobs, even though you're trying to help them with their bills.
No, absolutely happy to respond to that. So there are 3 differences with our windfall tax. First of all, we just started at the beginning of last year when we first called for it. Second of all, we would have a rate of taxation which is the same as it is in Norway on oil and gas. And thirdly, we wouldn't have those big loopholes, those big investment allowances for further fossil fuel investments which the government have. Now, look, I think when you're putting forward a windfall tax, you've always got to be clear what the basis for that is. And in this case, it is because there has been this unprecedented spike in prices that began to occur at the start of last year because of the illegal invasion of Ukraine. I think if you're clear about that and you're not just doing it because you need a bit of revenue and you see a potential source there, the argument that has been put forward, which the government ultimately did accept, that taking some of that excess profit that has come about through the illegal invasion of Ukraine, using that for the benefits of households and businesses overall, benefits the economy as a whole. I think that is a specific argument and it should not deter investment when that is brought forward. Last year, when even the government moved on this, the companies themselves did admit there were no investments that had been pulled as a result of it. So I think it's an absolutely fair question, a fair challenge to politicians putting it forward, but I think the way we have targeted this prevents any loss of investment and ultimately should incentivise more investment in the kinds of alternatives to fossil fuels which the country clearly needs.
You've a big task, Jonathan Reynolds. The Conservative Party would have this self-proclamation that they are the friends of business. The Conservative Party's the friends of business. How do you convince people that you would be?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So historically, what you've said, I think, is the perception a lot of people have had. But I'm afraid the Conservative Party, first of all, has lost that through their behaviour. I mean, there is no doubt that the last 15 years have been very poor historically for the economy and living standards in the UK. I think on top of that, they haven't really articulated a way to make Brexit work for the long-term future of the country. And finally, I think they haven't built on the opportunities of this big transition to low-carbon energy, which the whole of the world is now engaged upon. So for my part, I think we have more ambitious plans on all three of those things, but also we're there to tell people genuinely we believe that the kind of answers the country needs requires a partnership between business and politicians, and we believe we in the Labour Party are the best partner for that. And that message, that work over the last 18 months has generated quite a lot of success. I think you might have heard yourself on the programme, I think the chairman of Tesco, John Allen, saying that on this agenda only Labour is on the pitch. So look, there's a big job for us, you're right, a lot of people to win over following that very significant electoral defeat for us in the last general election. But we think we're doing it. We think the polls show that. There's no complacency. We're going to continue working very hard because we think this country could be doing a lot better than it is under the Conservative Party, and the chance to serve, the chance to do that is all that we're about.
So you want to be the friend of business. Are you the friend of women? We heard from your colleague, Pat McFadden, yesterday on the channel saying that the behaviour by your male colleagues towards a female MP, Labour MP, standing up for women's rights in the Commons was wrong. Should there be disciplinary action? And is it a party for women? Are they welcome there?
Well, absolutely, I believe it is. I mean, first of all, Labour has more female MPs than male MPs. The shadow cabinet that I'm a member of is absolutely packed with leading female figures, so I absolutely do believe we are the party of that. I think on this particular debate around what the Scottish Government have done around gender recognition, it's important to say that improving that process of how people make that transition, if that is what they, what they're about, what they need to do, is different from the issues of how you make sure you are protecting single-sex spaces under the Equality Act. And we're absolutely committed to the Equality Act and upholding it, and that is an important part of the safeguards and provision in this country. So I think I'm not aware of the specific incident. I was aware in the Commons there was some controversy around that debate, but I think the policy positions and the personnel we've got are absolutely in the right place on these issues.
OK, so that's a no to disciplinary action, just to be clear.
I'm not aware of the specific incident you're talking about in terms of asking for disciplinary action, but on the issues themselves, I can tell you I think Labour's position to look at reform of gender recognition processes, but also make clear we'd uphold the Equality Act, is absolutely the right position to have.
OK, we'll leave it there. Jonathan Reynolds, Shadow Business Secretary, good to have you on. Thanks very much indeed for your time and bearing the -3 degrees in Westminster as well for us. We appreciate it.
With that, we'll take a break and we'll be back talking about if you plan to take part in the National Grid's idea to lay off your energy between 5 and 6 today after the break.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The week ahead is looking a bit of a mixed picture. There will be cloudier and brighter days for all of us, but to start off the week at least, it's going to be cloudiest in the north and west, courtesy of this frontal system that's pushing in. This will bring outbreaks of patchy rain and drizzle to southwest Scotland, the Isle of Man and other coastal districts of the Irish Sea, where we've got high pressure holding on in the southeast that is allowing some freezing fog patches around first thing this morning, so do just take care when you are travelling out. The cloud will eventually push its way into Kent and East Anglia, the best of the sunny intervals then once the fog does clear across Yorkshire, the Humber, down into the Midlands and Hampshire. It is going to remain, though, fairly cold in the southeast, temperatures only around 4 degrees Celsius. But further in the north and west, underneath that cloud, it will remain milder, highs around 9-10 degrees. The outbreaks of rain and drizzle just tending to fizzle out a bit as we move into the overnight period, but more extensive cloud pushing into the far northwest with further spells of rain for the Western Isles and Northern Isles. The cloud that we saw pushing into the southeast will also make its way further inland, so that reduces the risk of frost for this coming night. Towns and cities around low single figures here, but there's that slice from the Humber into the Midlands down into southwest England where it is going to be another cold start to Tuesday morning. Tuesday on a whole then, looking rather cloudy for the vast majority of us. It's going to be that sliver from the southwest up into Lincolnshire where we see the best of the sunny intervals, but generally across eastern areas of England into eastern areas of Scotland, perhaps eastern areas of Northern Ireland as well. There could be a few brighter spells to watch out for. The contrast in temperatures continues, mild in the northwest, climbing into double-digit figures, but much colder in the south and east. That will reverse as we move throughout the week. The milder air will push its way more to the south and temperatures will drop off a bit as we move into Wednesday for northern areas. Have a good day.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
National Grid moves to avoid blackouts by paying you to use less energy as the country faces freezing weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Just after 9 o'clock on this Monday morning, 23rd of January, freezing and frosty it happens to be, and a bit foggy as well. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Hundreds of thousands of households will be paid by the National Grid to use less energy today between 5 and 6 p.m. as it rolls out a scheme to avoid blackouts for the first time.
The Conservative Party chairman, Nadeem Zahawi, is facing claims he tried to avoid tax after reports emerged that he paid HMRC £5 million when he was Chancellor.
Boris Johnson's visited Ukraine amidst questions about his appointment of the BBC chairman Richard Sharp, who allegedly helped the former PM secure an £800,000 loan.
And she's our very own aspirational woman. Beverly Turner will tell you about winning this prestigious award at the weekend, beating a lot of big names in the process. And that award was thanks to you. It was a public vote, and we'll be speaking to Beverly very shortly in order to thank you.
Yes, and our top story this morning focusing on the situation with incredibly cold temperatures and concerns about energy supply. Households across the UK could now be in line for payouts if they reduce their energy usage this evening in order to stave off nationwide blackouts.
Well, the National Grid say they're launching a one-day trial amid fears of an energy supply shortage as the cold weather grips the country.
The electricity system operator is expected to pay out over £1 million to households who reduce their usage between 5 and 6 p.m. today.
Will you be one of those households? Well, earlier we spoke to the former head of Energy UK and a former Economic Secretary to the Treasury. That's Angela Knight.
I suspect that with the greater use of smart meters, this is going to be one of the ways where people are going to be able to both pay a little bit less for their electricity, but also help with what is undoubtedly a shortage of power in this country. However, the real issue this evening, I would suggest, is not so much that, or interesting trial though it is, it's the fact that our last 3 coal-fired power stations have warmed up. And the fact that we have to do that does really give an impetus on us needing to build more reliable electricity generation, because cold winters aren't going to go away.
Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, in all of this. Good morning to you, Tom. First of all, your reaction and, I suppose, the political take on what's happening with energy supply today.
Yeah, I suppose it's a very logical energy move. Ultimately, there are peaks and troughs in terms of demand and peaks and troughs in terms of supply, and trying to match them up a bit better using incentives through smart meters is a very sensible thing to do if it avoids those blackouts. However, to some extent, politically, it does show that there is an undersupply. And clearly, as we have been turning off our nuclear power stations, as we haven't invested so much in that reliable baseload energy over the last 20, 30 years, it really does expose some holes in the system. So perhaps the politics of this are separate from the economics of it.
Sticking with politics, though, lots of pressure building on former Chancellor, current chairman of the Conservative Party, Nadeem Zahawi. I believe he has just arrived this morning at Conservative Party HQ. Do you think he's going to last the week?
It's a big, big question. The Labour Party, of course, is calling for his resignation. There are, to some extent, problems from the fact that all of this is only sort of dribbling out now when Nadeem Zahawi, of course, paid these back taxes and the associated 30% fine over what HMRC describes as carelessness. That was back between July and September. I think one of the big problems now for the Conservative Party chairman is this is only sort of coming out in drips and drabs. It wasn't open and transparent at the time it was paid.
At the time he was Chancellor, the boss of HMRC. If he can be careless with his tax affairs, then what message does that send out to the rest of the country? He talks about propriety in public office being incredibly important, and we have the Prime Minister saying integrity and professionalism are going to be key tenets of his time in power. And here we have this sort of mess.
Of course, what the government would say is this predates, of course, this current administration. It predates Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, and indeed it was all settled back over the summer. It also relates to time in the 2000s where there's a very very complicated structure of trusts and funds and fathers and a big successful company as well. HMRC are careful to say that they're not implying malice here, they're implying carelessness, which clearly is not a very good look for someone that was for 3 months in charge of the country's finances. But clearly the Conservative Party and indeed the government saying here that taxes are, at the end of the day, a personal matter.
Yeah, well, look, Boris Johnson also predating the current government, but he is still continuing to cause problems for the government. The headlines across the papers about Boris Johnson and this dodgy meeting where he was with the now chairman of the BBC whilst he was applying for the job as chairman and was facilitated an £800,000 loan.
Yes, now Richard Sharp, the chairman of the BBC board, does say that he perhaps introduced people to one another. He would deny specifically facilitating that loan, but it is clear that at the time at which there was an appointments process underway, perhaps people were very close to one another. This is something that the Labour Party is now calling for a parliamentary investigation into, not yet calling for the resignation of the chairman of the BBC board, but saying that there are facts here that do need to be looked into. And it all adds up to this sort of atmosphere of questioning what on earth is going on. Does the government have a grip over the state of the country? And at a time of strikes, at a time of energy crisis, at a time of war in Europe as well, is this really what we all want to be talking about? No doubt that will be undermining the government's play for stability at this time.
OK, Tom, thank you very much.
7 minutes past 9. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's news stories. Ambulance workers are staging fresh strikes today in their ongoing dispute over pay and working conditions. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, said it was hugely disappointing, but that constructive talks were held regarding a pay settlement for the year ahead.
Experts are warning the recession is expected to hit the UK. Could be twice as bad as previously thought. Updated forecasts show a 0.7% drop in GDP this year, followed by 1.9% in growth in 2024.
A charity is calling on the government to commit to eliminating cervical cancer by improving screening, raising public awareness and an uptake of the vaccine. Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust says screening for the disease is now at its lowest level in 20 years. Well, I just want to bring you up to date with some news that happened on the social calendar on Friday night. These were the Inspiration Awards for Women, and they took place in London. And the shortlist for these awards was for Inspirational Public Figure, Alison Hammond, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Davina McCall, Beverly Turner, Bethany Mead and Julia Bradbury. And the winner was Beverly Turner. We say congratulations to her today. Nicely done. And you've brought in the actual award here yourself. And the reason we want to talk, congratulations, absolutely thrilled for you. And really, we've got to thank our listeners and our viewers, because this was a public vote.
Absolutely. I think it was a bit of a shock to me, to be nominated. So it's an anonymous nomination. And so I got the call from the organisers to say, you've been put forward for this and the votes are coming in. And so I was kind of like, well, that's a bit strange, obviously. But and when I got the feedback from the judges, they said that the feeling that they were getting from the people who were voting, they said the fact that you were an advocate for free speech over the last couple of years, the difficult conversations that you had on the TV about asking the questions around the logic of lockdowns, around closing the schools, around closing down businesses. And so I think people kind of, I guess, related to the fact that they were also having difficult conversations. It was difficult for everybody, whether you were talking about it on the telly or whether you were talking about it around the kitchen table or you were at work trying to raise those questions.
You were giving them a voice that they feel that they didn't have.
Apparently, which is lovely, Eamonn, because it wasn't easy.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, nor is the lineup. I mean, I always think you should judge awards by whoever you're up against, or in terms of that category. And that was a very, very strong lineup there for for you to win, and absolutely brilliant that people see you in that light.
Thank you. It is brilliant, and it's brilliant for GB News as well, as much as anything. That's what I think this award is. It's not just for me; it's for the channel as well, I think, and what we hopefully represent, which is asking the tough questions, looking at both sides of every topic. The last few years, we've seen one-sided debate and not enough journalists asking the questions of the politicians or the medics or whatever it was of the decision makers, that a lot of people felt were frustrated by that. So it's great.
Both you and me are named in a Sunday Times article yesterday. And my only sin was to say that you should always question the narrative. Apparently, I would have thought fellow journalists would have agreed with that. Apparently not so.
No.
And so you can see that when you don't fit into the norm, or that when you break ranks, you're very much exposed. But you've got a whole audience that says thank you for doing it.
And, you know, the irony of that piece yesterday was sort of saying that there is an increasing appetite for counter-narrative. Okay, and that's what I think is absolutely accurate. There are a lot of people who feel that they aren't being well serviced by a lot of the legacy media at the moment. And I think we as a channel, and hopefully us as individuals and as journalists and presenters, are kind of stepping into that space, I think, and representing the views of people who have got questions that they just watch the telly and they go, why is nobody asking this question? Why is nobody looking at it from this angle? So yeah, it's not easy being a little bit, you know, we are disruptors, aren't we? That's what we intend to do. We
Head
are
above the parapets. Hold it up there. They are listeners, viewers. There it is.
I did just get the sound man to polish my award. I've been using it all weekend and the kids were misbehaving. You can't do that. I am inspirational, you know.
Inspirational.
I mean, look, it's great, isn't it? Just to be recognised for anything is always lovely. You've had it with the Trick Awards. So.
Beverly is continuing her inspiration from 10 o'clock this morning.
Thank you.
OK, have a good show. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Stay with us. Coming up after the break, Andrew Pearce is in the studio with his say on the top stories, including what he thinks about Zahawi's tax troubles.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. Joining us now to discuss the top stories of the day is GB News presenter and consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce. Very
presenter of this show on a Thursday as well, it has to be said.
Sitting in the hot seat.
Indeed, keeping it warm. Listen, Nadeem Zahawi, you've spoken to him before in the past, haven't you?
I've known him for very many years.
Yeah. And he's popular.
He's a great guy. He's a very successful businessman. You want people in government who've run businesses, who've been successful, but equally you want people in government who've been squeaky clean when it comes to their tax affairs, because I'm afraid you do have to be squeaky clean, especially if you've been Chancellor of the Exchequer, albeit only for a matter of weeks. And we now know, because this has been like pulling teeth, that Nadeem Zahawi settled an outstanding tax bill when he was Chancellor. Talk it was around £4 million plus a penalty, which means he didn't... Now, he's saying he made a genuine error, and he's putting that in quote marks, but I think the pressure now is going to be overwhelming for him to release exactly what HMRC did say.
Do you know why he has to do that? Because people don't understand tax complications. No. The public just say, oh, that could have paid for 500 nurses, whatever. Now, I don't know Mr. Zahawi's situation, but it is not a good look, and he needs to come out and explain and say he was caught with his pants down, or he wasn't. But either way, the Mirror, I think, have got a very good front page here today, which basically attacks Zahawi. Just if you burn money, pay your taxes. The Prime Minister using a car, then wear a seatbelt, and then, as in Boris Johnson, you need a loan, go to the bank, not to your mates who you then appoint as a governor or the chairman of the BBC.
Extraordinary, the story about Boris Johnson and the chairman of the BBC. And it's also extraordinary that when he was in Number 10, Boris Johnson needed to get some form of loan subsidy for £800,000. How many children does this man have? I mean, why would he be in so much financial difficulty? He's living in a Grace and Favour house in Number 10 and then at Chequers. When he was a Telegraph columnist, he was getting £250,000 a year in addition to his MP's salary. And yet he needed this loan facility. As you said, as the Mirror say, probably better if he'd gone to a bank, but he'd be frightened it'd leak. This has leaked and it looks even worse.
But does it even matter that he needed a loan? Isn't the question more that there was a process, a job process for the chairman of the BBC role, and this wasn't declared, and then he got the job? I mean, there needs to be serious questions about that.
There'll be a lot of questions about can he continue in that job. What's his name? Sharp. And he's a good chairman of the BBC because he, again, has been had a good career as a businessman. But it now looks like a crony appointment.
Yeah.
Now, in the Times, you've got a story on page 14 about a vegan menu.
I love this. Cambridge Council, thinking they're being all woke politically correct, decided for civic events they would go vegan. Well, the people who went to the reception voted with their stomachs. They didn't eat the food.
Did they not?
90% of it was thrown away. Why thrown away? Why not give it to the homeless? They'd eat vegan food. Not sure I would. And it's just a sign of where these things are going. And this is all pressure from the Greens on Cambridge Council. Of course it is. Why have you got to have vegan food when you go to reception? You're paying your council tax. You've got a bit of dairy.
It's not normal.
Ham sandwich. Thank you very much.
Maybe a vegan option.
A vegan
Fair
option,
enough.
yeah. But they want it. It's going to be all vegan food at Cambridge Council in 2 years' time.
And
Mad.
continuing the theme, this is interesting, in The Sun, £1 million being spent by the NHS on a series of diversity and sustainability jobs.
This does my head in. I've talked to Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, about it. He said, you've just got to put a stop to it. We see these big ads in the Sunday papers for these, all about improving people's lifestyle, diversity. They're spending about £45 million a year on diversity officers in the NHS. It's a scandal. That could be paid for nurses' pay, or better still, hiring more nurses. Does the NHS need any diversity training? Because any hospital I go into, it's the most multiracial, diverse
environment
you could ever find. It's like the League of Nations, isn't it?
I tend to agree with you, and you know, people are so grateful for the help and the care that they get. You can't imagine, but then my skin, you know, paints a different story. But you imagine that you wouldn't be discriminated on because of your skin in jobs like that. But who knows in today's society?
Doctors, pharmacists, nurses, all sorts of different colours. In fact, most pharmacies in London, if you go to, they're often Asians.
But I remember talking to a nurse once, and she said to me, she was taking blood from me, and we were talking about racism, and she said, there can be some requests from people that they want somebody white to take their blood.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, but then maybe it's just one-off nutters. I mean, you'd like to think so.
That's isolated.
Yeah.
But you might have a long wait in the NHS, and if that's the case, because I think a lot of
that's very true. That's very true. So, what's the latest with Prince Andrew then, and the whole Ghislaine-Maxwell connection and Epstein?
The King must need this like a hole in the head. Mail on Sunday, my sister paper wrote yesterday that he wants to try and overturn the whole case. Because Virginia Giuffre, who he settled with, was it 10 or 11 million pounds? He settled all this to make the case go away last year because of the Queen's Jubilee. A woman he claims he doesn't remember meeting. Why would you give her 11 million pounds then? He now wants to reopen the whole case because she's now admitted she may have been confused about somebody else she alleged sexually abused her, a very high-powered American lawyer. So he's got about 10 million pounds now, Andrew. He sold that chalet in Switzerland with his ex-wife, and the Queen would have left him money, and he'd have money anyway. And apparently, the paper is saying the King is happy for him to try to clear his name. I don't believe it. They want this buried away, and him to stay out of public view.
If he deems, you know, in his own mind that he is innocent, that this is a miscarriage of justice.
He's never admitted any guilt. He says he's innocent.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Eamonn. Will he go in the witness box? If he reopens this case, unlike last time, does he go in the witness box? Is he going to be allowed to be questioned about his relationship or not with Virginia Giuffre?
Buckingham Palace, most certainly.
Can you imagine what the palace would make to that? And isn't that what the lawyers for the other side would say? Great, see you in court. Here's the witness box. You're under oath, remember? And we know how effective he is when he's answering questions because he made such a hash of that interview with Emily Maitlis.
Yeah. 5th of May, Friday the 5th of May is Coronation Day, and there's all sorts of calls about replicating the dish created for Her Majesty the Queen in her coronation, which was coronation chicken.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to throw into the pot that you think that they could be doing to mark the big day?
Inviting me. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be scaled down, but I think it's going to be great, and it's going to be. Look, none of us have lived through a coronation before. The big question is we can't get away from them, Eamonn and Isabel. Do Harry and Meghan go on the balcony? If they're there, they won't, because they'll make it only working rules, which means the Duke of Gloucester, if he walked in this newsroom today, nobody would recognise him. He looks like a building society deputy manager. He'd be on the balcony, and Harry and Meghan wouldn't.
All right, Andrew Pearce, we have to leave it there. Always
Thanks, Andrew.
See you Thursday.
See you Thursday.
Thanks
Looking
very
forward to
much
it.
for your
Thanks
take.
very much.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. We'll be back bright and early from 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Have yourselves a good day. Coming up next, Tom Harwood and his briefing.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The week ahead is looking a bit of a mixed picture. There will be cloudier and brighter days for all of us, but to start off the week at least, it's going to be cloudiest in the north and west, courtesy of this frontal system that's pushing in. This will bring outbreaks of patchy rain and drizzle to southwest Scotland, the Isle of Man and other coastal districts of the Irish Sea, where we've got high pressure holding on in the southeast. That is allowing some freezing fog patches around first thing this morning, so do just take care when you are travelling out. The cloud will eventually push its way into Kent and East Anglia, the best of the sunny intervals then once the fog does clear across Yorkshire, the Humber, down into the Midlands and Hampshire. It is going to remain, though, fairly cold in the southeast, temperatures only around 4 degrees Celsius. But further in the north and west, underneath that cloud, it will remain milder, highs around 9-10 degrees. The outbreaks of rain and drizzle just tending to fizzle out a bit as we move into the overnight period, but more extensive cloud pushing into the far northwest with further spells of rain for the Western Isles and Northern Isles. The cloud that we saw pushing into the southeast will also make its way further inland, so that reduces the risk of frost for this coming night. Towns and cities around low single figures here, but there's that slice from the Humber into the Midlands down into southwest England, where it is going to be another cold start to Tuesday morning. Tuesday on a whole then, looking rather cloudy for the vast majority of us. It's going to be that sliver from the southwest up into Lincolnshire where we see the best of the sunny intervals, but generally across eastern areas of England into eastern areas of Scotland, perhaps eastern areas of Northern Ireland as well. There could be a few brighter spells to watch out for. The contrast in temperatures continues, mild in the northwest, climbing into double-digit figures, but much colder in the south and east. That will reverse as we move throughout the week. The milder air will push its way more to the south and temperatures will drop off a bit as we move into Wednesday for northern areas. Have a good day.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice,